that are supposed to be in the Global South, and how Research4Life is trying to support this through providing access to information and minimizing as much as possible the digital divide between the Global South and the rest. So not much more to say. As you all know, climate change is not just an environmental issue. It affects different layers in society, like food security, human health, and sustainable development. And particularly the Global South is facing the biggest probably challenges with rising temperatures, erratic rainfall, land degradation, and the increase of infectious diseases worldwide. And this is also threatening the progress of some of the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, that the UN has established to support the zero hunger, the good health, and the climate action. So this session will try to stage for how knowledge access through these collections in Research4Life is helping to build resilience and to minimize, as I was saying before, the access to knowledge and this digital divide that exists today. So let's target a little bit the issue about climate food health. So climate change is definitely a food and health crisis. This is out of discussion. Hundreds of millions are food insecure, progress stalled post-pandemic, and the Global South is also facing risks with fewest resources and in infrastructure to support and deal with these big issues. The agri-food systems are dramatically affected by this climate change, and not much more to add to that. I think that all of you might be aware that the increase of temperatures and this warming increase is really affecting anything that has to do with the agriculture and the agri-food ecosystem. The question here is why the Global South is particularly exposed to that. There are three, or there are, let's say, a couple of main questions here. One is that the number of people that are in agriculture is very high, and this definitely then is affecting a major number of population in the world. And well, yes, so the resilience in that sense is a little bit weak, and so people need to work. People need to work in agriculture, and this is being challenged by all what I was saying before related to the climate change and the consequences of that. The health risks in a warming world are not really things to take under consideration. There is a heat stress and undernutrition. Let's say aspects that are together with infectious disease risks. There are also diseases that are expanding. Here it's written dengue at record highs, but particularly also there are other diseases that were almost gone, and now they are showing up again in a kind of a dramatic number and increase. And the situation is means that people need to, in order to deal with these things, need to have access to literature to provide means to them try to minimize these effects as much as they can. And here we are. So what I was saying since the beginning, and there is the knowledge divide. Policies, extension, and care pathways need current research published today. And this, as you all know, is not easy and has some costs. The paywall is, as a matter of fact, is a big challenge, and is definitely not supporting this access to these publications and research that is being on the web today. Sorry, many institutions in the global south lack sustained access, so they could probably afford to purchase some articles here and there, but not in a way that is sustainable and reliable for the whole the needs that they have, and that they could help to minimize, as I said, as much as possible these effects of climate change. And closing this gap is central to equitable adaptation, definitely, yes. So as a matter of fact, Research4Life is probably one of the best tools that exist today that help to provide this equitable access to science. This is a global partnership. I'm pretty sure that you all know this is why we are all here today, and provides science, research, and policy information for institutions and individuals in the global south. There are 5 programs, Hinari, Agora, OARE, ARDI, and Guwali, that connect knowledge across the health, agriculture, respectively, environment, technology, and law. By strengthening access to credible information, definitely Research4Life is enhancing and not only enabling evidence-based decisions, innovation, and capacity development, essential pillars of resilience. Here, we added a slide that is also providing another view, which is complementary to, or is complementing Research4Life, or particularly in the food and agricultural sectors. Research4Life is very much focusing on the English and let's say scholarly communication outcomes. While, for instance, in food and agriculture, the multilinguality is a must, and there is 50% of the publications that are in gray literature. So we are talking about reports, conference papers, etc. So in order to make sure that we can provide access to these different type of information, complementing what I was saying before from the Agora program, FAO 50 years ago set up this program, which is FAO Agris, and is also not so big as Research4Life is, because Research4Life definitely has a broad coverage, more than food and agriculture, but there are 60 million records, 2,000 providers giving access to their publications for free, and the multilinguality aspect. So we have 123 languages represented. So this is a kind of different type of resource, but is also helping to provide resources to minimize this digital divide, as we were saying before. And there is quite a lot of publications coming from the global south in Agris as well. Well, just to let you know that it's also a different way to participate. Institutions that decide to provide open access to their publications, they can simply do it using very standardized protocols directly from their institutions, through institutional repositories as protocols of Open Archives Initiative, etc., etc. So it's a kind of different paradigm, but that with Agora and FAO Agris, we are covering probably about 90% of everything that is available in food and agriculture, and this is the most important thing. What about the reality of Research4Life? Well, we have over 11,000 registered institutions and in more than 125 countries, all of them benefiting from Research4Life access. The very important value of Research4Life is this network of publishers, UN agencies, and academic partners that are really providing resources and helping to close these information gaps. This is the most valuable aspect of Research4Life, and this is the reason why it's really being successful, doing what their objective. So we have almost 175 institutions working together to make sure this digital divide is reduced as much as possible. And as I said before, this is supporting cross-disciplinary solutions and health, I repeat it again, health, food, environment, innovation, law. And yes, this promoting quite a lot South-South learning and digital literacy tools. Libraries, universities, and research organizations, together with governments, use Research4Life resources. There is a very important aspect in Research4Life that is dedicated to capacity development, and this is thank you to the team that was mentioning Lenny before, that is providing activities in Research4Life to make sure that there is training in place to support that the individuals can make use of what is available in Research4Life. And definitely Research4Life supports librarians and educators as knowledge brokers. So we are making use of these librarians and educators to make sure that we are reaching the public, the users that have to access Research4Life. Looking ahead, yes, we believe that resilience, current and future resilience, requires knowledge. Climate, food, and health are very much related together, each other. So we can only, let's say, make sure that this is minimized if we are looking at the whole thing in a more kind of ecosystem way. With Research4Life, there is no institution that should be left behind. If you are not part of the network of Research4Life, for sure, after this training, you should be part, and you should also promote it among your networks. And the objective of this workshop definitely is to make sure that we can connect and act all together, and to create this knowledge base that can help others that might not know about these resources to make use of them. And well, you have here some of the references that I was using before, and that's it. So this is my short introduction. I hope that you are going to have a very nice time with our colleagues, and I wish you the best. Thank you.
Well, we definitely appreciate your, excuse me, opening remarks and putting everything in perspective. And we seem to have a very nice turnout. We're in triple digits for people people accessing this. So we're very excited about pulling all these different concepts together, these different disciplines, and you put it in a very good perspective on how this training is necessary. And do you have any other additional remarks, or we can?
No.
You can go back to your your many tasks that you have to complete in your multiple positions. And we appreciate you coming and making some really relevant opening remarks. Thank you very much. Now, if I understand correctly, I'm doing this a little from memory, the next speaker will be Blessing Mwire, who many of you know from the Country Connector program. I've worked with her for, it must be 15 years now at least. We're so pleased that she is running this Country Connector project. But she's going to wear a little different hat today, and she's going to speak about knowledge professionals being first responders. And this is a really dynamic role for those of you that are in. I know some of you may be researchers, but we have a lot of librarians, we have a lot of information staff, we may have some individuals who teach about doing research. So we're very pleased to have Blessing to put this in a very critical perspective of being first responders. So at this point, we turn it over to her, and her PowerPointers are already displayed. Good afternoon, Blessing.
Good afternoon and good morning for you, Lenny. And thank you for inviting me to be part of this course. This workshop is really exciting for me. Good afternoon to everyone. Good morning from wherever you're joining. It's really good to see our colleagues joining from different parts of the world. So like Lenny said, my role today is to really maybe set the scene if I can and follow on the good keynote that we had from Emma and talk now specifically on how knowledge professionals, information professionals can play a part as first responders to climate change and public health. And I'm wearing two hats. Lenny has talked about the first one. My hat is in Research4Life is leading the country connectors and also as being a member of the Capacity Development Committee. But I also wear another hat today as the convener for IFLA's Evidence for Global and Disaster Health interest group. And I'll talk a bit more about it and give some examples from some of the work that we're doing. So I really want to show the practical steps and what really the goal is and how we can contribute as well. So how do we exploring how do we add value in that chain of climate change? How do we become first responders? And what is our crucial role in responding to, and not only responding to, but in being prepared at mitigating the effects of climate change on public health? So looking at a global perspective, because I started thinking about what we're actually doing, not only within the IFLA group, but what we're also doing across the different members that I sit with within the Evidence for Global and Disaster Health. And we normally try and look at a global perspective. So today I just thought of giving some general examples and picking up some practical ways that we can implement wherever we are based geographically as well. Let me just minimize this. So starting off with the example, I think for colleagues who are coming from the US, this issue of the fires in California. And I know that there are other explanations to the fires, but one of the main explanation is around the impact of the start of the fires due to climate change. We all know that the temperature is rising in many parts of the world. Definitely here where I am in Pretoria in South Africa, we've just started our summer and it's irregular. We have temperatures that are as high as never been seen before. And then the very next day, it becomes so cold and rainy. So we have this very anomalies within our climate as well. We also look at examples of issues like tsunamis and earthquakes, especially within areas or countries around the Pacific regions, around Asia, where there are a lot of tsunamis and earthquakes that are currently ongoing. I was with one of my colleagues who was actually in the group and who attended a previous workshop, just experienced a tsunami in their country in Asia as well. And these natural disasters are being further amplified by climate change. Then we also talk about heatwaves in Europe in general. I know I talk specifically here about the UK because of a case study that I was looking at, but we're looking at how public spaces such as libraries are being used currently as cooling centers to enable communities, especially the homeless or those who do not have anywhere to go, to be able to find shelter, especially in times of heat waves. So just to set that at a global perspective, there's a lot more that is happening. If you go up further north, we're finding the rapid melting of the icebergs right in the north. If we look at Iceland and other countries in that region, which is also causing a rise in the levels, sea levels and ocean levels, which then inherently causes the tsunamis and other cascading disasters that we're seeing. So I just thought I would give these as examples to just shift our mind and look at it at a global perspective as well. So what is then our role of knowledge professionals in acting as first responders? We need to be able to have the vital skills, and I'm happy that part of this workshop is enabling us to have those vital skills. How do we access, how do we organize, and how do we actually disseminate vital information around issues of climate change and public health? How do we then work with what we call frontline workers? This could be your medical officers, this could be your climate officers. How do we work hand in hand? Do we have relationships with them to ensure that they see our role, they see the importance of what we are doing behind our desks? So if we have the right skills, in other words, going back to the first point, if we have the right skills to be able to access, to organize and disseminate the right information, which is evidence-based, we're able to actually work in tandem with the frontline workers as well. I see there's a hand up. Maybe what I can do is I'll finish just now. It's not a long presentation, and then I can take questions at the end. Is that okay, Lenny? Okay,
sure.
Great. We are also then talking about working with frontline workers. I'll give a few case studies as well to just show examples. This is quite pertinent. What happened, and we've got examples. Let's take the example of COVID, which was also a type of a disaster, in which really impacted our public health. It came at a time when there was a lot of unpreparedness, and there was a lot of unpreparedness, especially around the evidence, where you would find that a lot of communities would rush to social media, would rush to just looking at the news to seeing what can I do individually at my house, what can I do with a specific community, and a lot of people ended up doing the wrong things. So one of the key frontline workers which has emerged is the knowledge professional, because we have a role where we know how to access, organize, be able to put together systematically the information and the evidence that is actually correct, and be able to disseminate it to our different communities. So we need to continuously work in tandem with those frontline workers. And we need to also provide, like I indicated, evidence-based appropriate information, whether it's to our own researchers. I'm giving this point especially because some of us are coming from academic institutions or research institutions. We need to work in tandem with our researchers, with our faculty, and the communities that are around our institutions as well. So what do we do? And I want to emphasize participate. So I thought that was a summary, but let's participate, let's be practical, and I'm going to give a few examples of what we can do. So the first example that I want to talk about is a project that is ongoing, and I will add actually a reference section to this presentation before sharing it with Lenny and the team. We need to be prepared every time. This is an example of a program, a project that started as a project, it's now a program that is based in the US, but it's available globally. What I like about it, besides that some of the committee members on my committee led the inception of this program, it's called the preparedlibraries.org. And what it provides is key resources, provides case studies, it provides media in different formats, presentations, all these resources to help you be prepared for any disaster, whether it's around climate change or public health. And it is really a project that is quite unique, because especially in the knowledge profession, because it's emanated because of the disasters that were happening specifically in that region, but it is applicable in any region. So I wanted to give this as an example, and this is a tool that you can use. These tools that are provided through this program are tools that you can also use to implement, customize, and have your own preparedness plans in your own institutions as well, and be able to implement them, get them approved by your management, and be able to implement them as well. If you're working for government, let's say you're in the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Health, or Ministry of Agriculture, or in Climate or Environment, this is quite key for you as a knowledge professional to have in place as well. So I'd encourage us to also use this as a resource or a tool, and I'll provide the links to all these examples at the end. The specific case study that I started talking about is the California wildfires, and the same colleagues who came about with this preparedlibraries.org were very involved, and I talk about them because they're colleagues that I work with hand in hand and on a continued basis. But they were providing real-time evidence and guidelines to emergency workers, and which is quite commendable. And I know that this case study keeps growing. The case study of the California fires keeps growing and keeps being refined in the way that knowledge professionals actually are working in tandem with these emergency officers, because it's a yearly problem that is found in California. But the knowledge professionals are working at state level, what they call state level in the US, with the public health officials to even manage and provide evidence and information on the air quality. They also work with the weather department to make sure that this is then distributed to their communities and are seen and regarded as actual health advisors. So I think that this is quite key, that they sit on crucial committees and they provide the evidence-based information and are able to be recognized for the work that they do. They have established disaster policies that have now been adopted at institutional levels and at state levels, and this is our all knowledge professionals. So what are some of the practical steps that you can do to start off your journey in becoming a knowledge first responder in times of disasters? Conduct systematic reviews. I think most of us are quite good in doing this. If you need more help, if you need more training around how to conduct or compile systematic reviews, speak to our capacity development team led by Lenny and Jihan. Develop those evidence-based guidelines and partner with research teams in your own institutions, especially around climate impact studies or public health studies as well. It is key that as knowledge professionals, we assist, and I use the word assist, but I think I should have used a better word. We participate or contribute in designing and implementing research projects, especially where we've got these massive projects at our institutions. We need to be part of the team. We need to be part of the team, whether it's trials, if you're working at a health institution. I really like a change in policy that has happened within the NHS UK. NHS UK has got a large side, which is actually now called Public Health UK, which is a team of information professionals, whereby they're even getting paid sabbatical leave to become members of trial groups, such that whenever they travel and go to a region and are conducting these trials, and remember, trials can take years to compile, they always have a knowledge professional on the team. So I would advise you also to become a team member, whether it's on a big research project, whether it's on a trial in health and environmental studies. Participate, have your voice, and show the value that you have in that group as well. Knowledge professionals, one of the major skills that we have is in the critical and appraisal of evidence as well. So these are some of the examples of what you could be doing if you're a member of a trial team, of a research team. Have those skills available, critically analyze the data, whether it's qualitative or quantitative, and be able to have the skills to analyze, critically, apply to your research or to the team's findings, be able to also disseminate in various formats for different audiences. Most of us as knowledge professionals, we also have skills around data management. And this is a skill that we can also bring to these groups that are doing research or trials as well. Now, looking at libraries, because I know that in the audience today, we might also have smaller libraries where you're not attached to a research institution or a group that is doing this bigger research or trials. Some of the examples that I pulled out, we have a colleague who's based in the UK, and they work with smaller, even public libraries and smaller research libraries. And I like this example because it might sound like, oh, a very simple thing. But, with Europe and globally, the rise in temperature, but with Europe specifically, one of the problems that they've had even in the previous summer, earlier in the year, was the issue of heat waves. And in the UK, most of these libraries are providing these cooling centers. And it's something that I haven't seen myself where I live here in South Africa, but it is really practical, simple and easy, where they bring in and open up a space within the library, make sure that it is well air conditioned and people can come and sit in until, maybe end of the day. Whilst they're in the library, they also make sure that they, advertise and, let them know what the library is all about, and they use their services. So this is something so simple, but that could be used, done by libraries as well. Another practical example could be providing those educational materials and resources on climate change. A lot of people in a lot of communities do not understand issues of climate change in whatever is happening in your community around public health as well, and see libraries as the source, the trusted source of the information. What libraries need to do is just to package that information in ways that are understandable by the communities. Even if you're working in a big research institution, for a researcher, it makes sense to give them a systematic review because they've got the time, they've got the skills and the ability to interpret and read through. But if you're working in a smaller environment where you're working directly with the communities, have a simple flyer that has got a few points or pictures and things like that that can be useful to the community that you're working with. The same applies to students as well. Make them aware of the issues of climate change and public disaster health as well. And most of the libraries and information centers that we also have now are acting a lot and a lot of initiatives around green initiatives. So what are you doing also in your own institution to work and contribute to reducing the effects or impact of climate change and disaster preparedness? What are you doing as a I know I've got colleagues who will say, oh, we've got a recycling bin. Yes, great. We all have recycling bins even in our homes, I hope. But there's much more. There are a lot of initiatives, and most of them do not cost so much money. You have programs in your libraries that speak to green initiatives. Show practically what you're doing also as a library. In your own reports, do you report about how you're contributing to mitigating the effects of climate change in your institution as well? And then I wanted to give also a resource that I'll also make available. I'll make sure this is available, the electronic version to Lenny and to Gian. Each year, my special interest group within IFLA, we provide summaries around evidence for global and disaster health, and particularly around how knowledge professionals can be first responders. This year, we produced this briefing on what is the evidence on the role of libraries in supporting climate change. So what is the evidence? What does the literature say? And this resource provides many other examples as well. So this will be provided for you. This was led by one of my colleagues whose role at her workplace is really to produce summaries. What we've also done is we've partnered with WHO, and we contribute to their publications around knowledge professionals or libraries and climate change as well. So I'll also provide the links to those resources as well. And then I wanted to also show that there's a lot of research that is happening in the back, in case you're not aware, about libraries as frontliners. And this is one example of an article that was published recently that shows you that there is a lot that is happening at a global scale. So please take time, do your research, look at what the literature is saying, and be able to practically apply it to your own context as well. Some other recommendations, I've talked about systematic reviews, establish those key partnerships with your local and global, whether it's your ministries of health, ministries of environment, ministry of agriculture, establish those local partnerships. They're quite key. Train the professionals in data collection, analysis, appraisal, and so forth. Equip your communities, whether it's your researchers, faculty, students, with the evidence-based information and resources that they need on climate change and public health as well. And of course, lastly, utilize resources such as today. We're going to look at how to use Research4Life. This is a key program that is making sure that you not only access evidence-based literature, but it is making sure that you also contribute to it. So if you are working in a space where you maybe produce a journal, please talk to Gian and to Lenny on how you can also contribute to Research4Life, how your work can be made visible, so we also understand what is happening in your community, in your country as well. And on that note, I'm going to stop here. Thank you very much. Thank you, Lenny.
Thank you, Blessing. This gives us a nice broad perspective of the dynamic role that librarians can and information professionals can attain, and how to integrate yourself at your organization about these critical issues. But at the end, Blessing mentioned the Research4Life and practical activities. And for the next, I think, hour, we're going to focus on the Unified Content Portal, and also focus on how to search with Summon and Google Scholar, Research4Life Google Scholar. So this will be a very practical part of our presentation to make sure that everybody is up to date on these skills. And with that, I turn. Let me just say one thing, because I'm still waking up here. We have, including us, we have 140 participants. We are so pleased and excited to be able to teach all of you. And I turn it over to my colleague, who's going to give you a little frequent talk about registration, login issues, frequently asked questions, practical material, practical solutions for better using the Research4Life products. Thank you, and I turn it over to Jahan.
Sorry, just to check, Lenny, I noticed that there was a hand before when I was presenting. So if that person or other people have got questions, I'm happy for them to post them in the chat, and I'll also respond to them. Over to you, Gian.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, Lenny. Thank you, Blessing. I don't know if you are seeing my screen.
Your screen is fine.
I'm not seeing my screen. I don't know why.
You just need to make it be presentation mode, Gian.
No, I'm not seeing the screen. The screen itself. I will stop share. Sorry, and I will share again.
Okay, just switch it to the presentation mode. Yeah. And it's good. Perfect.
Good afternoon and good morning, everybody. Please allow me during this lesson to talk to you about Research4Life, the Research4Life partnership and collections, the eligibility criteria for Research4Life, and what is the Group A and Group B categories, the agreement in terms of reference of use Research4Life, how to register for the collection, for the 5 collection, how to access the collection, and at the end, the frequently asked questions that have been frequently asked to our colleagues in the help desk. Research4Life is a public-private partnership of the FAO, WHO, UNEP, WIPO, along with Cornell University, the STM, and more than 200 international scientific publishers. The main goal for Research4Life is to introduce the knowledge gap, to reduce the knowledge gap between high-income countries and low and middle-income countries by providing affordable access to an amazing quality and high-quality scientific research. And since 2002, Research4Life have been providing researchers from more than 11,000 institutions in approximately 125 low and middle income countries with free and low cost online access to an amazing collection up to 200,000 leading journals, books, and there are definitely ebooks and e-journals, databases, and other e-resources. I just mentioned the knowledge gap that have been created between low and middle income countries and high income countries. So we need to know why this knowledge gap is due to. This knowledge gap have been due to high cost of subscription for scientific literature that have been long unaffordable to the universities, professional schools, organizations in the low and middle income countries. And since 2000 as well, it has been a problem for high income countries as well. I will give you an example to clarify the reason. For example, to subscribe to a journal same like Lancet, it requires several $1,000s. This is for one resource. So to submit or to subscribe for some resources, it will be very, very difficult for our colleagues, researchers in the low and middle income country. And this is what caused and increased the knowledge gap. Access to Research4Life is restricted to national universities, professional schools, research institutes, teaching hospitals and healthcare centers, government office, national libraries, agriculture extension centers, and local non-governmental organizations. And this is according to some factors that define if a country is eligible to register for Research4Life or not. These factors are total GNI by World Bank, GNI per capita by World Bank, United Nations least developed countries, and Human Development Index by UNDP, as well as the healthy life expectancy by WHO. And I should mention that countries that with a total GNI that exceeds the $1 trillion are not eligible to register for Research4Life. The eligibility to access the Research4Life is decided by a committee and is assessed once a year. And it depends on different factors that are mentioned that I mentioned here. And it defines that if a country is eligible, whether to to join Group A or Group B, or not eligible at all to join or to register for Research4Life. Group B countries must pay $1,500 per calendar year to access the 5 collection, not only one. When we are registering for Research4Life, we have the right, we are eligible as well to access the 5 collections. However, Group A countries have free access to the 5 collections as well. This is a map that defines the countries that are assigned to Group A in blue color, Group B in yellow one, and in white that the countries that are not eligible to register for Research4Life. And to register for Research4Life, there is an agreement that requires to be signed between the registered institution and publisher partner for Research4Life, and it allows the publisher offer and defines the rules of use of all Research4Life collection, and it gives main information on the use of credential, copyright, and fair usage as well. It is very important as a Research4Life eligible registrant or user to know what we can do and what we cannot do, what we are allowed and what we are not allowed to do. We are allowed to share the password with colleagues, students within our institution or organization to download 15% of a resource, whatever it is, use the material for education purpose, and make copy for the institution members, and to use our computers, laptops, and faculty device. It is very important, really, to know what we are not allowed to, because sometimes if you are doing something we are not allowed to, it may lead to either the deactivation of the institution password or the whole country. So we are not allowed to share the username and password outside our organization, or to publish the website or publish credential online. We are not allowed as well to access Research4Life program remotely from other installation or when we are traveling. Here I want to point that at the time we were only using the desktops at in our institutions. We did not have the mobiles, we did not have devices or any portable device. Now we have all these devices, and we can access with our laptop or mobile or any other device from our university or institution. Then we can access Research4Life from home when we are traveling. But please, it will be from our device, because your IP will be well recognized in Research4Life. If you are doing otherwise, it will lead, as I just mentioned, to the deactivation of the password. So you can use, yes, you can use your laptop when you are traveling with your username and password, okay? We can download only 15%, so we cannot download the whole issue or the whole resource. To supply documents available that you have downloaded from the Research4Life for fee. This means that we cannot sell these resources because we have taken, or we are eligible to have these resources for free, therefore we cannot sell it. To modify, adapt, transfer, or create any derivative work from the publisher material. And to register for Research4Life, you can use this URL, and I need to point that it is an institutional registration, not individual one. And to register, either you can use this URL, or you can send me your information. I will leave you my email address at the end in the chat. You can contact me and I can do the work for you and contact the help desk. But please, before you proceed for registration, please download the list of registered institutions to ensure that you are not really registered in Research4Life. This will help my colleague in the help desk very much. And if you are registered, you can go to the librarian, consult him, and have the username and password for your institution. The Research4Life Unified Content Portal includes 5 collections: the Henry Research for Health, Research in Agriculture Agora, OARE Research in the Environment, RD Research for Development and Innovation, and GOALI, the Global Justice. And as I just mentioned, our main goal, or the Research4Life main goal, is to reduce the knowledge gap between high and low income countries. And to access Research4Life, there is two ways, either through the institutional IP or institution login credential, which is the username and password. These are some resources that may help you to understand Research4Life. And if you have any question, you can address your questions to Lini or myself. And now I will go through the most common or frequently asked question that have been addressed to the help desk team. This regarding yes.
We're running a little late, so do the best you can.
Sure. Thank you, Lini. Thank you, Lini. This is about the registration. Sometimes we have the question that your institution is not displayed or do not appear in the registration list. Actually, if your institution is a research institute, governmental office, national library, and agriculture extension center, or NGO, it will not appear in this list because we are considering these information as confidential, and you can address your query to your librarian than to the Research4Life help desk. And actually all the stuff in any institution can access the 5 collection, registered institution as well, of course, or eligible one, but please do not give your the username and password to on-site visitor. These visitors we are calling as well the walk-in visitors. And you can get your institution username and password again from the librarian or the admin responsible for the collection in your institution, or the Research4Life help desk. And if you do not, of the librarian, do not have the username and password, please contact the help desk and give them the country name, institution name, librarian, institution director, computer support, username and password. And this is, again, if you are leaving your institution, definitely we are not allowed to use our current username and password in the future institution. Just have a meeting with the senior management, disseminate the Research4Life, tell them how is beneficial to register for Research4Life and what we are gaining or they will gain from registering to Research4Life. And please, if you are leaving, contact the help desk, inform them that you are leaving and give them the new librarian information. This is very important. Yes, Lini, I'm running out of time, so I will jump to the important questions, the most important questions. So please go ahead and check with your librarian first. And if you are using the correct username and password and still have the error, the first thing you can do, you copy and paste the username and password. And this is the proper way to use the username and password, avoiding any typo, to copy and paste it and ensure that you do not have any spaces at the beginning, at the end of the password. If the problem still exists, please close your browser, refresh it, and open it using this URL, or use in private cognito window. If after all these steps the problem still persists, please go ahead and contact the help desk. They will help you. Regarding the content you can access from the landing page of the Research4Life Unified Content Portal, you will find the hamburger menu at the top right corner. Please go to the report, select country offer, and this will give you a full idea about the country, content available in your country. So here I selected Uganda and faculty, and here we have the full collection we have in Uganda. You will have as well this useful rectangle that explains what means the icons that are displayed beside each resource. Okay, and as well download a list of your content. And if you cannot access any of your collection, please contact the help desk and send them an email that includes the country name, institution name, IP, a screenshot of the error, and a URL as well, because this will help them to solve your problem. And if they do not have the authorization, they will send it to the publisher. So these information will help them to accelerate solving your problem. And we urge you, please, to sign the license on yearly basis, because this helped us to update the records. And please sign the license as it's. We cannot change any part of the license because it has been carefully reviewed by the legal, and it includes legal terms. So if you wish to take the advantage of the content provided through Research4Life, you will need to sign the existing license. In Research4Life, we are providing the usage 2 times a year. The first at the beginning and at the middle of the year. And we are providing only the login statistics. Unfortunately, we are not providing the document view, the journal downloads. And only the librarian, the administrator responsible for the collection in your institution, and the director can ask for these information. I'm always mentioning these 3 officers because in the registration form, we are mentioning and we are indicating the name of these 3 people. So if anyone will go to the help desk and ask for any information, they will not give it to him. And we are urging you as well to contact the publisher directly if you need to publish a paper. We are providing a list of publishers you can consult. You can access the training material as well from the main menu training tab. It will give you access to the webinars, the librarian hub that includes all the training materials. Yes, the frequently asked question. I urge you, please, to consult the frequently asked question page. Since my colleagues in the help desk have done throughout the last 3 years a tremendous effort to update this page. So please consult the frequently asked question first, And if you do not find an answer to your query, then you can go ahead and contact my colleagues in the help desk. Thank you so much, Lini. I think I am in the right time.
Yep, we're doing as well as we can. I hope your voice is all right, though.
I don't know what happened. I don't know what
get
happened.
A drink.
This is the first.
Get a drink. It's the first time it's ever happened.
Thank you, Lini.
Yes, that's right. Okay, on the program now, we will go to our colleagues from Makerere University in Uganda. They are country connectors for that country and are excellent teachers. And we asked them to talk about the Unified Content Portal and also how to search using Summoned, and we call it Research4Life Google Scholar. One of the people in the chat mentioned that she has had some connection problems, so I hope that has been worked out. Okay, now we turn it over to Caroline and Faith from Makerere University, and we are very happy to have country connectors presenting at this workshop. Okay. Are you two able to come on now?
Hi, Lenny.
Oh, there
This
you
is
are.
Carol, and Faith should be presenting her presentation soon. Faith, are you on? Faith, okay, thank you.
Okay, it looks like Faith's sharing your screen, so we are in good shape. Okay. And Faith, just please switch it to the other format, to the view, and then we're ready to go.
Hello, good afternoon, good morning. From wherever you are listening into. Can you hear me?
Yes, very clearly. We can hear you very clearly, and we have 140 participants, and in some places more than one person is hearing you. So please go ahead, because this is very important review for them to make sure they're using the Unified Content Portal correctly. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Lenny, and thank you, Jihan, for brief overview of Research4Life. And I noted some of the slides that you covered, so I'll be jumping them. By way of my outline, the presentation, I'll go briefly through the introduction, then how to access the Unified Content Portal, then how to browse it, how to do a database search, the journal search, and then the different resources, free collection, and Jihan mentioned the country offer and title lists. I had also put here troubleshooting using content portal help page, and then the connection between Research4Life and SDGs, which Jihan has also pointed out. So I'll jump some of those slides. Librarians, how do we leverage library resources for global health, global food, health, and environment? One of the ways we do that, as Blessing mentioned earlier on, is to provide access. So access has been provided, but now we need to give our users skills to be able to access these resources. And how do we do that? Is through training. So this is one of the kinds of ways that we provide access to Research4Life content. So our learning objectives, I hope by the end of this session, we'll be able to understand how to access resources from the Unified Content Portal, Agora and ADDIE, understand the coverage of the 5 program collections, browse Research4Life content, and then the hamburger menu has briefly been talked about, and then also the content country collections. Jihan began by giving us an overview on introduction about Research4Life, but now this is specifically for the Unified Content Portal. And I'm saying that via the Unified Content Portal, there are 5 collections, and users can access Research for Health, which is Hinari, agriculture through Agora, environment through Oware, development and innovation through ADI, and then global justice through Goali. Now, the Unified Content Portal has its own portal, but Agora and ADI also have their own separate portals. So we can access Hinari, we can access Goali through the Unified Content Portal, and then Agora and ADI have their own separate content portals. In total, we have 39, maybe my statistics may be wrong, 39 journals, 204 books, and then 155 information sources. That was by 2023. But I believe now a lot has happened. More content has been added into the platform. As Jihan mentioned earlier on, the goal of Research4Life collection really is to reduce the knowledge gap between low income and middle income countries. And we do that by providing affordable access to the scholarly, professional, and research information. So how do we access the Unified Content Portal? Unified means one, but as I said, Agora and ADI have their own separate portals. So the first website address there, or URL, takes you straight to the Unified Content Portal, and then the next and the Agora and ADI. So how do you log in? You can log in to the Unified Content Portal from the Research4Life main page, or you can use the portal, the Unified Content Portal a URL, which I have put there. And then, of course, you use your username or password, but they also have institutions that have IP registration. So these login details are usually available through our librarians, and we can access using our desktop, our laptops, computers, and mobile phones. So that is the interface, the first interface when you use the Research4Life URL, and that is what you see or what comes on the screen. And before you access, you need to log in. And when you log in, of course, you'll be asked or requested to sign in. So the login instructions are very clear. That is the page or the pop-up window, and this information is usually given by your librarian, and then those institutions with IP-based access will not be asked for credentials, because if they're accessing the portal through or at the premises of their library, they will be logged in automatically. And when you continue using this portal or accessing, it usually takes about 3 months. You will not even be able to, you just log in automatically. So when you use the URL I gave you, it gives you the 3 options. The first one is, the blue one is for the Unified Content Portal that gives you all the 5 programs. The second one gives you Agora, and the third one is ADI. So when you log in with your institution's username and password, you will be able to access what is available at your institution. Now, these are the first pages of both. The first one is Unified Content Portal. Then the next one is for Agora, and the third is for ADI. As I mentioned earlier on, that you can access all these programs through the Unified Content Portal, but Agora and ADI have their separate portals, which you can, if you're interested specifically on Agora, you go straight to Agora. So this one, I think, let me jump this because we've talked about this, but now there is also a summon function or a summon search box. I am not going to talk about that. My colleague Carol will talk about that and she will do a demo on that. But on the screen, you will also see the person symbol located at the top right corner of the login page. And in this case, for instance, once you're already logged in, it will show your institution. But if you go ahead and also create an account in the system with Research4Life, you'll also be able to log in as you yourself. So how do we do this? When you click on access content on the first page or initial page, all the resources for Research4Life will be displayed, of course, after you have logged in. And then if you've not logged in, everything that is in Research4Life will be displayed, including what you do not have access to. But the moment you log in, whatever is available at your institution is what you'll be able to access. Jihan talked about the Hamburg menu, but this is just an alternative if you do not have a laptop. This is a mobile phone access to Research4Life. So there is this provision for our researchers. If you do not have a laptop and your phone is a smartphone, you can be able to access Research4Life or Unified Content Portal through the Hamburg menu. As you can see, the three dashes there, when you click on it, you will see you can access content, collection, search content on the right-hand side, as you can see. Now, how do you access specific collections? From the initial portal page, which I showed you earlier on. Once you've logged in, you scroll down to the initial page till the collections is listed or is displayed. And as you can see, there are 5 collections there. And all these are links. If you prefer to go straight to one of the programs, you can do that. But since this is a unified content portal, we can do these searches from this one point. So that is for ADI. And if you want to return to the Unified Content Portal, always go to the Research4Life logo and it takes you home to the Unified Content Portal. Now we can start by browsing collections under the Unified Content Portal, and you can access specific collections by clicking on the program. For instance, we have Hinari, Agora, Adi, Goali, and Oare. But we also have the language options and content options. Now, under content, we have access to journals, books, reference sources, different databases, some free resources that are available, and we can also can access publishers, and then we can also access or search by subjects. So apart from the collections, you can also use the content or language options. And for languages, we have about 5 languages. We have French, we have Arabic, we have Spanish, we have, there are about 5 languages, and that simplifies the work for some of the colleagues who are do not speak English. So of course, English is the main, but we also have content in these different languages. So when you are searching, we have the filters, what we call filters. as I told you, there is content collection and language, but there are also various filters. And these options help you to refine your searches. For instance, if you wanted a journal, and in a journal, there is a subject, so you are able to do that through filters. There is also, you can also filter through publication date and then the authors. So as I said, if you want to go back to the home page, to the Unified Content Portal, you just click on home. But what is on the screen now is searching Agora collection. So you can see that this slide shows content associated with Agora. And as I said, you can go through Agora directly, but now this is through the Unified Content Portal. So at the search symbol at the top right corner displays the summon search tool, which my colleague will take you through. But we also have an access key, which shows you the specific item that is available for the users or that is not available. And when you're searching, always take your cursor, click on home, and it clears the filters that you have applied or that the system has applied. Otherwise, it will continue giving you information about what you searched earlier on. So how do we search the databases now? This portal gives identical features for journals, for books, reference sources, and free resources. So on the Unified Content Portal, you click on the content menu and you'll be able to access the databases, the journals, the books. And when you click on databases, it displays all the resources in this category under databases. So that is exactly what happens. A total of 42 Research4Life databases are listed in alphabetical order, but this depends on your country. For instance, in Uganda, they may be less than that or the same. So as I said earlier on, the moment you start searching and you're logged in, the information or the results that you get really are based on the access that is provided at your country or in your country. But you can also use apply the collection, publishers, language, and subject filters to the database listing. For instance, if you wanted to access the collection or the works by John Wiley and Sons in French, if it is there, you can choose that and you'll be able to access that. Now, for instance, if you went to Hinari as a database, you choose Hinari, you click on Hinari, and then, of course, you get results that display how much is in Hinari, okay? And when you scroll down in Hinari, one of the databases under Hinari or resource is PubMed. So when you click on PubMed or you take your cursor to the letter P, you'll be able to access PubMed. But to remove all these filters, you must click on the X or go to home page. Otherwise, they will remain activated. So how about the journals? It is the same principle. You click on journals from content, and then, for instance, if there is a discipline that you want or a journal that you want, you choose the journal and also the publisher. For this demonstration, Environmental Sciences as the subject, John Wiley and Sons as a publisher, and what is accessible is 66 titles for Uganda. And you can go ahead and look at the journal title or one of the journals, African Journal of Ecology, to be able to access the full text articles. And you can use the Find Journals option also to do the same, as well as the A to Z title list. But as it is here, or recommended, please deactivate the filters by clicking on the letter X. So for the journal, for these demo purposes, African Journal of Ecology, that is published by John Wiley and Sons, and the display, you get the display. When I did a search, I got from the current is 63, and it has issue 1 to 7. If you do a search, but for these slides, this was before it was updated. Databases, reference sources, and free collections. In Research4Life, we also have free collection. We have reference sources, and of course, we've seen the databases. And reference sources are 91, database 42, free collection is 22. But that depends on your country. And from there, you'll be able to access discipline-specific resources, for instance, environment index or agriculture and environmental statistics for the environment, PubMed for health. These are the different specific resources. And we also have interdisciplinary resources such as dimensions. Now, I've taken you through the journals, the databases. Now I'm taking you through the publishers, and I've been mentioning John Wiley and Sons, that is one of the publishers under Research4Life. And for John Wiley and Sons, how can I say it? They cluster. They separate their titles, but others just cluster, and that's why we've chosen John Wiley and Sons. You'll find a listing of books, you find a listing of journals, and also essential evidence in John Wiley and Sons. For John Wiley and Sons, if you, for instance, you chose John Wiley and Sons, you click on the title, users will be able to access the content of the journal. Now for this one, if you chose Abacus, you'll be able to access the journal's content. But we also have a listing of what is in John Wiley and Sons, the content under John Wiley and Sons. And it gives you the journals, the books, the references, but under John Wiley and Sons as a publisher. How do you browse by subjects? You choose subjects from the content menu, drop-down menu, and then you choose subjects, and you'll find an alphabetical listing of the subjects. And you can choose which one is you're interested in. And each subject contains a list of Research4Life books and journals that fall under that topic. Now for this demo, I chose biodiversity, for instance, as a subject. And then the filters, collection, content type, I can also apply if I wanted. And of course, as I told you, the access key gives you what is available. So under biodiversity, you can be able to filter by collection, by content type, and content type, there are 33 journals, and then books are 2 under biodiversity as a subject. But also you can filter by publication date. The hamburger menu, Jihan talked about it, but on the right-hand side of Research4Life, under Unified Content Portal, there are 3 dashes. You can click there and you will be able to access a window where it shows content, collections, search content, personal, and all this information is there to guide the users. So searching content, in the previous slide, if you chose search content, from the hamburger menu, you can use the Boolean operators and you choose what you want. but also you can filter by publication type, author, and all that. So the search content tools such as the journal or book titles are available in Research4Life, but doesn't give you the full text. So for instance, if you did a topic search, of course now like public and health, for instance, as you typed there, it gives you results, 424 results, which gives you a list of journals and books available. And as the key shows, those with the P, you have access, and then there are those with F, which are provided free of charge. You can also sign in after you have signed in your institutional sign-in after completing that, but you can also choose to create an account on the system. And what you see on the screen, you can, if you're a new user, you can register. But there are those who are existing users after you've already created an account. You will, on the right-hand side there under the person's icon, you will see the logins there. For instance, if you created your own account, your ID, and you'll be given an ID. And it sometimes when you get apps. So that is what I was explaining. So country offer, Jihan talked about this. I do not want to really dwell so much, but if you want to know what is provided under your country, you go to reports, of course, hamburger menu reports, and then country offer. And then the title lists give you the different lists of journals and books, and these are in different file formats in Excel, and which you will be able to download for instance, for reference for your users, and you'll be able to tell them what exactly is available under Research4Life. So that is creating a title list. When you download that, you'll be able to use that, the title list, to help your users know exactly what is available under Research4Life. Those are the files I talked about, Excel, and then comma separated values, text files. These are the file formats. So Carol will be able to take us through the login, the searching summon, and she'll be able to take you through how to download, how to save, whatever you have retrieved from Research4Life. If you want any help, there is a content portal help page, and you can read that, what it offers, the tips for using the new content portal. But you can also contact Research4Life. You can contact the help desk, but also your librarian, who will be able to support you access the content from Research4Life. Jihan talked about the connection between Research4Life and SDG goals, and I'm not going to go through that. Research4Life does a lot. Most of the SDG goals are here covered. And as you can see, we have goal 17, partnership for the goals, reduced inequalities, SDG 10. Then we also have SDG 4 and SDG 5. All these are very, very important work that Research4Life is doing in order to align with the global development goals. In summary, I've taken you through how to access Research4Life collection resources by going through the Unified Content Portal, of course, not through demo, but I've shown you the system interfaces, and also Agora and ADI content portals. We've explored the content collection, databases, and journals through Unified Content Portal. We've also covered the additional resources, as I talked about, the free resources that are available, the reference sources that are available apart from Agora, apart from the 5 programs. And we have also seen how to identify what the publishers have granted access to by the access key. And then, of course, how to find help in case you need help, and the link between Research4Life and other international development agendas through the Sustainable Development Goals that Research4Life works through in whatever they do. So for more information on Research4Life, Jihan also gave this. This information is available on the Research4Life page. I thank you.
Very quickly, thank you for your detailed presentation. I think everyone understands what's available in the Unified Content Portal. We're running about 10 minutes late. Caroline, you may have to condense yours a bit, and we may skip the break because we have other people coming in to talk about publishing and ethics. So I'm going to stop here. I just want to note that everything will be made available to you. All the videos, all the specific lessons. We will send that link out after the workshop. So Caroline, you're up now. And I'm not sure. Explain something on Portal. Okay, I'll answer that question on the side. I'm not sure if you'll have time for a demonstration or not, unless you want to spend 5 minutes going over things and then do a demonstration. Thank you, and I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Lenny. Greetings to you all colleagues from all over the world. Since I have a few minutes, I'll quickly go through the content, the Unified Portal. Basing on my colleagues' presentation, specifically on knowledge professionals as first responders to climate change. How do we access information, and how do we provide this information to stakeholders? This is the Research4Life Content Portal, and in the Research4Life Unified Content Portal, we have an inbuilt discovery tool, which is Summon. When you do a search from the Summon tool, it searches across all the other resources. Faith has mentioned that Research4Life comprises of so many resources, reference resources, databases, journals, etc. So when you do a search here, I'll quickly do a search, climate change, and food security. Okay, so when I run a search, I have several hits. I have 20,000 hits. I think as professional providers, we know how to narrow down our search by providing searching food security as a phrase by putting it in double quotes. Sorry, I'm in panic mode because of that time. Okay, so I'll search again. I have 20,000 results. I want to narrow them down. So when I narrow them down, I come to 18,000 results. And then how do I access these resources? The first hit has a PDF, it is obvious. The second title has full text online. You may click on full text online to access the resource. You may also want to know, is this resource relevant to me? So you do a quick look to view the abstract or the details about this article. So when you click on a quick look, it gives you the details about the article. So it's upon you, basing on this, upon you whether you should go ahead and download this article. As a researcher or an information service provider, you can share. You can share this article with a colleague within your country, or within your institution. You can also cite from here by clicking on the double quotes on the citation, or you can also, on these 3 dots, you can also cite using, depending on the reference tool that you're using. You can go ahead and also filter. On the left-hand side, we have the refined column. So you can filter accordingly. You can filter according to the chapter. In case I just want to view the chapters from my search results, I could select chapters. Since I've done a basic search, I could also filter by year of publication. I want resources, maybe for the last 10 years, I'll click on 10. If I want to customize, if the years I want are not provided here, then you're going to click on the pencil-like tool. You click on the pencil-like tool here and customize. Having done this, having filtered, I have 247 results. But again, in case I want to carry out another search, I can go ahead and clear. Still on the left-hand side, you have the clear option. You can clear all, or you can clear one by one. It's really upon you as the researcher. Okay, back on the content portal. Back on the content portal here, on the unified portal. Under content, you can access the different resources. The publishers are regarded as information providers, and you can also access the different databases. I'll explore one of them each. Information providers. When I click on information providers, you're given an A to Z list. So you may select a database that you want to search. For example, I'll select a common database, which is SAGE, or you can also do American Psychology Association. So let me select SAGE for now. So I'll click on S, since it begins with S, I'll click on S. Then you can tell me when to stop. So when I click on SAGE, I have the different publishers listed under S. So my interest is the SAGE resources. I'll click on the SAGE resources. Then it gives me the list of journals. As long as on the right-hand side, you have the access P to show you which resources are available to you. Under P, the title, any resource with P and green, it is available to you, or A, is open access, and the apostrophe, you don't have access. So when I scroll through here, most of the journals are available to me since I'm accessing from my country. So click on any of the journal titles. When I click on any of the journal titles, remember you as a researcher, you click on a journal if you're sure what you want to access in that journal is actually available to you. But the instant that you don't know what is available to you in that journal, that publisher, then you can go and search across the publisher. But you can also search. When I click on that journal and I put my search term here, I'm searching in this particular journal. But you can also search across the publisher's contents, if that was our interest. Then I'll click on the drop-down menu here on the pointer and select all journals, and I carry out my search again, food security and climate change. So whatever has a green padlock has golden padlock. Golden means open access, and then green means you have access to its contents as that it has been provided to you by Research4Life. So I'll go back to my unified portal. I'll go back to my unified portal by clicking here. Okay, before I go there, on the left-hand side, you can as well filter. We have the different filters here. You can filter according to the subject, collection of the journals, etc. So back on the content here, in case I want to search the specific database, I'll click on databases. So on the databases, we have various databases. And on this presentation, I'm also supposed to take you through Google Scholar. So I'll specifically search Google Scholar. So when one of the databases, Google Scholar, it is one of our search engines in Research4Life. So when I click on Google Scholar, I'll do my search again: food security, climate change, and food security. So you know that I've been searching Google Scholar from the Research4Life portal, meaning all these resources, whichever are, you see that they're showing that article from Research4Life. So whatever has a PDF should be available to you. So, but at the same time, you can link your normal Google Scholar to Research4Life. So let me also go through that quickly, since we are, I'll stop sharing this and then share again quickly. Let me open Google Scholar. So this is my normal Google Scholar, and I want to sync it with Research4Life. Remember, I have access to Research4Life from my institution. So I'll link my Google Scholar to Research4Life. On the Google Scholar interface, I'll click on the hamburger menu, and I'll click on settings. So when you click on settings, you click on library links. When you click on library links, it gives you an option to put in to look for the link that you want to connect your library to. So I'll type in Research4Life dash, and then you select space dash Uganda. Then I search again. I search. So now when I type Research4Life dash Uganda, it gives me Research4Life. Then it's already checked. So since it's already checked, you save it. So once this is saved, that means your Google Scholar, your normal Google Scholar is linking to Research4Life. Are you able to see my screen? Are you able to see my results? The resources from Research4Life. You can see, remember, this is now my normal Google Scholar, and it's showing some resources. Say you have resources from Oxford University Press, etc. So this is the easy way of linking your Google Scholar to Research4Life. Okay, I'll stop sharing that and go back to back to the Unified Content Portal. For the content, we have the journals. In case you have a particular journal that you want to search and you're sure of its title, then you're going to look for that letter that journal begins with. Please don't consider the art. For example, the journal of, begin with that letter, ignore the, and then begin journal of this. You begin with a J. So let's assume I'm looking for a journal that begins with R. I'll click on R, and okay, so you see that some journals are not available to me with an apostrophe, and then the others which are available to me. So for example, wow. Okay. Our economy, I'll click on that. So in this case, I can search this particular journal, since it's a journal that I was interested in. I can search across this particular journal. Okay, I'll go back. Now, on the hamburger menu, again, my colleagues have explained about the various reports. When you click on the hamburger menu on the right-hand side, we have the different resources, and one of them, both of them have mentioned about the reports. When I click on reports, I have reports, country, offer. Then I want to see, oftentimes, management they ask us for the list of journals that we have access to or that we access in our universities. So sometimes we want to give these reports. So when you click on reports, we have the title lists. So when I click the title list, I have the journals, the books, and I'm already logged in. So this gives me the list of journals or books that I have access to as my institution. So when I click on journals, I'm able to download. I think you're seeing the Excel sheet downloading. I'm able to download the Excel sheet for the various resources. Okay, I'll go back. And now you see if you're able to see my screen here, there were on this, the human icon shows that I'm not logged in. I have to click in to be able to click on it so that I'm logged in. You see that? I think my login disappeared as I was presenting, but you click on that to make sure that once it's shaded dark, that means you're not logged in, so you have to click on it and log it again. Okay, I'll stop sharing.
Caroline, I mentioned that the complete lesson we have on searching in Summon and searching in Google Scholar, we will make that available after the meeting so they can even better understand the searching you were going to do. I think we have to move on because we have the publishing people waiting to make their presentation. Did you want to add any summary comments?
Okay, thank you, Lenny. I think I've looked at the basics, but in case of any support, they can always contact us on searching the various resources in Research4Life.
If you put your email addresses in chat, they could, any questions, specific questions, they could send directly to you. It may come up next week or something, if you don't mind.
Sure, I will do so. Thank you. Thank you all.
Yes. Okay. I am the moderator and I have to make an administrative decision. Victoria, you're online. Do we want to give everyone? Thank you. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
We're going to have a dog in the picture, maybe?
Well, we're hoping dog will sleep, but you know, it's a puppy, so you never know. It might %.
Okay. Would you mind if we give everyone just a 5-minute break?
Yeah, comfort break. Absolutely. Yeah, no problem.
Okay, everybody take a very quick break and we'll come back. We have a wonderful group. The questions are going back and forth in chat, and we're very impressed by the number of people interested in everything. But now we're going to go to publishing and publishing ethics in 5 minutes, and this will be an excellent overview of the whole industry. So I will look at my clock, and let's say we start at the hour. That's 6 minutes from now. Okay, we will start at the hour. Thank you very much. Yeah, you understand these things. Capacity Development Committee, Victoria Bobbitt will be presenting Publishing an Academic Journal. And hopefully we have a little time for the two people presenting on this topic, because I know you will have a lot of questions. So I turn it over to Victoria, and I'm just so pleased that she's able to join us.
I am delighted to be here. So are you able to see my slides there?
Yes.
Perfect. Perfect. Yeah, and just to say, if for some reason we do run out of time today, you are so welcome to contact me after this session to ask any questions. But let me just get started. So today we're going to be looking at the publishing process, and we're going to be focusing a lot on how to identify quality journals and succeed in your objective of getting published. So we're going to be looking at all the elements, finding a good fit for your research, as well as how to avoid publishing in low quality or predatory journals. And then we're going to discuss what you need to consider when preparing your manuscript a little bit, and finish off with the peer review process. So let's just begin with a quick overview of the publishing process. And as said, we'll be discussing all of these elements somewhat in detail throughout the presentation, but this is a general overview of the process. So as an author, you will select a journal, often before you even write your paper. Then you would submit it for publication. There will be some editor checks at the beginning to ensure the article is a good fit and relevant. And then the editor will send it out to independent peer reviewers to assess it. And once it's accepted, it will be sent to the production department for typesetting and copy editing, and then it will be published online, and in some cases, in a printed copy of the journal. So let's start with the first step in the process, which is choosing a journal. And choosing the right journal for your work is incredibly important and really worth your time and energy for a number of reasons. One thing I always like to point out is the number one reason articles are rejected is because they were not a good fit for the journal in terms of the topic, type of methodology, communication style, etc. So we're going to be looking at some of the steps you can take, and you can encourage your communities to take to avoid that fate of being rejected because the article itself wasn't a good fit. And today I wanted to focus on some of the resources that are out there. And, really identifying potential journals to publish in, especially when people are starting out, can be really challenging. And there are many indexes out there, but I'm just going to take some time focusing on a couple of the most relevant journal indexes in terms of coverage. And the first one is the Web of Science Journal Master List. And then I'm going to show you the directory of open access journals. And then we'll just take a look at a publisher's website just to show you the kind of information that you should be looking for when you're looking at journals. So starting with the journals Web of Science Master Journals list. And I think this is a really good starting place if you're unaware of the key publishers and journals in your research area. And the Web of Science has a number of indexes, such as the Science Citation Index, the Social Science Citation Index, and the Emerging Sources Citation Index. And it's an index that has a strict assessment process for the journals that they include. So there are 24 areas of criteria, including those on the slide. So they want the basic publication information, and key here is contact details for the journal and the publisher. The article titles and abstracts need to be in English, but the articles themselves can be in any language. There needs to be a clear presence of a peer review policy on the journal website. They want to see timeliness of publication, so they don't want to see big gaps between articles being published or issues being published. They want to know that the content is high quality and relevant for the community it's purporting to serve. And then the website should be highly functional. And then they are looking for some key information about both the editorial board and the authors publishing in the journal. And the key thing there is affiliation details and that sort of thing. So let's take a quick look at the Web of Science. So hopefully you can see the Web of Science website here. Are you able to see that?
Yes, we can, Victoria.
Okay, thanks. I don't want to go too far into it and then have people say they're still seeing my slides. Okay, so here's the landing page for the master journal list for the Web of Science. Pretty straightforward here. A couple things I want to point out about this page is up at the top, you'll see that I'm signed in. We have an account, but even if you don't have an account, there's still a lot of functionality in terms of being able to search and get an overview of the journals that are indexed. The other thing I wanted to point out is this little area right under the search field there, which it says already have a manuscript and then match manuscript. So this is one of those kind of AI-driven tools where you can copy and paste your abstract into a field and it'll try and find a journal that fits your work. And I just want to note that most publishers have the same kind of functionality on their website. So this is something that you'll see more and more often. And most of these tools are getting quite sophisticated. But here we're going to take a look at some journals. And sticking with the theme, I thought we would look at Earth Sciences and see what they have for journals within Earth Sciences. So here's the landing page of the search results here, and there's a lot of different filters and functionality here. You'll notice that they found over 20,000 results. So we need to filter down a little bit because that's too many journals to look at to try and identify one that will work for you. So there's a lot of ways you can filter on the Web of Science. I think we can just filter by their current contents for agriculture, biology, environmental sciences. But if you scroll down, there's a lot of other ways you can filter as well. So you can filter by open access, but we're going to be looking at the directory for open access journals, so we'll skip that for now. You can filter by categories. So here you might be able to filter even more by putting in some keywords that will lead you to that content that you're really interested in finding. You can filter by country and region where the journal is published out of, language, frequency of publication, or journal citation report. So that just means does it have an impact factor or not. So here we can just come up to the top and take this first one, which is the Australian Journal of Earth Sciences. And already you see a lot of information here that I mentioned when I went over the criteria that they look for. So first you have the address, so the contact information for the publisher. You have the ISSN, you have the collection it's included in, and the other indexes that the journal is included in. But if you click on View Profile Page, you'll find even more information here. So here are some really key things and important functionality on the site here. One is they have direct links to the journal website, so you can click on there and you'll be redirected, and for the publisher website. And then here's some basic information about frequency of publication, how many issues, when it was first published. And again, here's that Web of Science coverage. And as you come down here, you'll see the impact factor information. And scrolling down further, there's a new metric here, journal citation indicator metric. And then you've got some other information about open science, different elements there to take a look at. This is an open access journal, so there's a lot of information there. And then down at the bottom, you've got some information about whether or not it's in the Web of Science Reviewer Recognition Program, and the information around that there. So lots of information about the journals. And as said, you have quite a few journals to look through if you are interested in publishing within Earth Sciences. But again, you can filter down more to find more specific journals in that area. All right, back to the presentation. Great, and then we have the DOAJ, which indexes open access journals. So it's a directory for open access journals. So here, there's a lot of information here. They too have a very strict policy for indexing journals. Right now, there's over 22,000 journals indexed in the DOAJ, and each journal goes through that rigorous evaluation process to be included. And the categories here are listed, and as you'll see, there are some OA specific categories such as OA policy and licensing terms. So there's a lot of information there, but I think the best thing to do is go take a look at the website, which is my favorite website because I think they've done a beautiful job designing it. So here's the landing page. And as you can see, there's a lot of information here. You've got 89 languages represented, 140 countries. There's a number of journals without APCs, which we'll talk about in a moment. But let's search for some journals here, sticking with the same topic. So Earth Sciences, and see what we can find here. Oops, that one didn't work. Let's try Environmental Sciences. Yeah, and oh my goodness. Let's see. Yeah, I know that I searched for this yesterday, but now it's, there we go. There we go. I probably just misspelled it. Okay, so looking at environmental sciences, we've got 400 journals indexed here. And again, a lot of filters that you can use to find journals that suit your needs. So you can search for journals without any fees. You can search for journals where authors retain all rights. You can filter down even more by different topics here. You can look by subject, and I always like to point out that there's always a high number of Spanish and Portuguese open access journals because, of course, Latin America was ahead of the game in terms of open access with Silo, and they have a lot of open access journals. You can filter by the type of license that the journal has, and I'll go over licenses in just a moment. You can also filter by publishers, so we can filter by Taylor and Francis just for fun here. You can filter by publisher countries, you can filter by peer review types, etc. So now let's just take a look at one of these journals here. So we can look at the top one here, Ecosystems and People. And again, there's already a lot of information on this landing page that's helpful. So you've got a link directly to the website. You've got the APC prices that they charge. It states that authors don't retain all of their rights, and then the different licenses that the journal has. And then if you click through, there's a lot more information to be found here. So again, another link to the website, a link to the ISSN portal. This is information that first page covers. But one thing that I really like that the DOAJ has is direct links to key information on the journal website. So aims and scope statement, instructions for authors, editorial board, and the peer review, type of peer review it practices. And then there's an expected average of 42 weeks from submission to publication. So they clearly state how much time you can expect. And then where the articles are archived and that sort of thing. So again, lots of information, and you would have over 400 journals to search for on that site. So once you've identified some journals that you think would be a good fit for your work, you need to investigate further just to make sure that the journal that you're choosing is truly a high quality journal. And unfortunately, in recent years, predatory publishers have managed to get their journals indexed in respected databases. So it's always a good idea to cross-check and make sure that the journal possesses all the characteristics of a quality publication. And your first stop should be the journal website. So let's just take a quick tour of our website so you can see the type of information available. And I'm using Taylor and Francis' website just because I'm familiar with it, but the information I'm showing you here, you should be able to find on any journal website. It's just the basic information. So let's look at Earth Sciences. I could have typed it in that field, but I just clicked on the subject area to get started. So this gives us a landing page here with journals, articles, or special issues, but we're interested in journals. So let's come here to the African Journal of Aquatic Sciences. click through here. So this is a hybrid journal, and there's a lot of information you can find just right away. There's the open access policy right there that you can click through to. You can see who owns the journal, who we co-publish a journal with, which is NISC. But then if we come down here, there are a few different tabs that you can look at. And first is this About This Journal tab. So once we click on that, you'll see the aims and scope, which I'll talk about in a moment. So we'll skip past that. You'll find different metrics for the journal. So the type of usage, citation metrics, if that's of interest. And then what is of interest to most researchers is speed of publication and the acceptance rate. And then as you scroll down, there will be information about the editorial board. And importantly, their affiliation, so where they're based. So you can scroll there. Then there's an open access policy, society information, etc. But another area that's really important to look at is under Submit an Article. And here you'll find the instructions for authors, which we'll go over in just a moment. But you'll also find the editorial policies. And I'm not going to talk about ethics in my talk because Tina will be covering that. But I just wanted to stress every journal should have editorial policies that are easily discoverable. And for most publishers, those policies will all be on the same page. So here for us, it's redirected to Taylor and Francis editorial policies, where you can scroll down and click on all these policies and read further. Wiley will have the same type of a setup. But as said, Tina will be talking about ethics in a moment, so we will move on. Great, so that is some of the basic information that you can find on a journal website. And again, it's really about taking the time to clearly assess each journal that you're looking at. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about open access, because I've mentioned it a couple times now, and we've taken a look at the DOAJ, but I just want to make sure that everyone understands all the different aspects of open access. So I'm just going to quickly go over some of the key elements for those of you who might be a little bit unfamiliar with it. And there are two essential elements to open access. The first is about making content freely available to anyone, anywhere in the world in a digital format. And then the second aspect is about making that content reusable by a third party after publication. So Gold Open Access essentially entails making the PDF or the version of record freely available online. And there are two ways in which an author can publish their work open access with most publishers. And that's either in a fully open access journal or in what is called a hybrid journal. So fully open access journals publish all of their content open access. These journals are not funded by subscriptions. Instead, most charge what's called an APC, or an article processing charge. Some journals are fully funded by societies or institutions, and in that case, authors don't have to pay the APCs. And when researchers don't have to pay, it's sometimes called platinum or diamond open access. Now, the second option for publishing your work open access is to publish in what we call a hybrid journal. So hybrid open access is when an author chooses to publish open access in a journal that is subscription funded, and much of the content is not freely accessible unless you or your institution has a subscription. And these journals charge an APC to cover the processing costs for the open access article. But many publishers have agreements with institutions to cover the costs of APCs for their faculty. And these agreements are called either transformative agreements or read and publish deals, this type of thing. And it's really about giving access to the subscription content, but also covering those open access fees for their faculty if they want to publish open access. Now, when publishing open access, the author or copyright owner, if that's different, signs an author publishing agreement in which they retain the copyright, and then they give the publisher the right to publish the version of record of the article. And the agreement will incorporate the Creative Commons licenses of license of the author's choice, which can dictate what others can do with the article once that article has been published. But keep in mind, some journals do not give you the choice on which type of license you can use. So it's really important that you investigate prior to submission if you have any concerns. But here are the licenses, and this is where people get a little bit confused about open access. So I thought I would take some time with this. And you're going to notice that these licenses have a bit of a mix and match quality to them. So the first license is CC BY, and this license allows authors to use your work in any way they choose, as long as they clearly attribute the original authorship and publication. And this tends to be the most common license for fully open access journals. And then we have CC BY NC, and here an author can use your work in any manner, but they cannot profit from it. For instance, they wouldn't be able to include your article in a book that they were going to subsequently charge money for if you had used a CC BY NC license. And then we have CC BY ND, and here the author cannot change your work in any way. They must use it in the original form. So for instance, this would mean that they wouldn't be able to translate your work and publish a translation if you had used CC BY ND. And then lastly, there is CC BY SA. And this means that when people use your work, that they need to attach the same license as you did originally. And this is, of course, important to be aware of when you're using others' work, other people's open access work. Now, as mentioned, these licenses have a bit of a mix and match quality to them. So you could have any number of combinations. And here's just an example of some of the different combinations that you might see during your publishing career. Now, before I move on, I wanted to briefly discuss predatory publishing. And many, if not all of you, will be aware of predatory publishers. And these entities present themselves as legitimate publishers, editors, or journals. And they seek to exploit the legitimate open access publishing model, and unfortunately have become quite sophisticated in their methods. It can be incredibly easy to mistake a predatory journal for a legitimate one. So it's important to really research a journal, especially if you're contacted out of the blue asking you to submit an article. Predatory publishers will flood your email inboxes with invitations to publish your articles with them. However, often the journal in question will be well outside of your research area. So take a look at the example on this slide here. This is an email my partner received, and it's from a medical journal interested in publishing his research, which focuses on financial economics. So one would assume not a great fit for a medical journal. Predatory publishers have many characteristics in common. Their websites contain incorrect or misleading information. For instance, they'll often copy established journal names and website design, but include some small differences, such as maybe a slight difference in the journal title. The editorial boards will feature names of well-established researchers who never agreed to be on the board. We've even seen quite a few examples of editorial boards with like famous movie stars on them, like Brad Pitt or George Clooney. They also promise very fast peer review and publishing time, so promising publication within a week. And crucially, the peer review process often doesn't happen or is fabricated in some way. Lastly, they often have confusing or unclear information about publication fees. So any open access journal should have really, really clear and easy to find information about APCs. It shouldn't come as a surprise at the end of the process if you have been paying attention and doing your research. Now, unfortunately, a clear definition of predatory publishing can be pretty difficult for any number of reasons, but the main one being that predatory journals tend to change their tactics regularly. In addition, an inter-academy partnership report states those definitions fail to distinguish between deceptive or fraudulent journals and journals that are low-quality outlets that might willingly disregard academic norms, but be well-intentioned. And this is the main critique of the so-called blacklists. In that IAP report, they mapped out the spectrum of predatory behaviors, which is a helpful way of thinking about predatory publishing. Researchers should avoid journals that could be considered fraudulent, deceptive, or exhibit unacceptable low quality. Here, there's likely an intention to exploit authors, but authors should also proceed with caution if the journal is of low quality. While the publisher might not intend to exploit the author, they may not have standard practices in place, such as preservation and indexing of articles, proper production practices, and minimal discoverability of the website, which means that very few will find and read the articles. So as mentioned, the best way to avoid publishing in a predatory journal is to do your research. Check out the website, look to see if the journal is indexed, and if you're unfamiliar with the journal or publisher, remember to double check on that index site. If it says it has an impact factor, go to the Web of Science and see if the journal is listed. And if you find a journal with the same name on the Web of Science, click that link I showed you that redirects you back to the journal website, and make sure that it's directing you to the same journal website you were looking at originally. Look at the content. Is it high quality? Is it understandable with correct grammar and copy editing? And check out the editorial policies. Number one, do they have any? And number two, are they robust, clear, and easy to find? And then don't forget your local community. See if they've heard of the journal or publisher before, or if they have any experience publishing in the journal. And lastly, I always like to highlight this resource, Think, Check, Submit, and please use it if you're unsure. They've created a great resource. It's a toolkit for investigating journals, and it's covering many of the topics that we've discussed so far today. All right, back to finding a suitable journal for your work. Now, once you have identified some high quality candidates, you need to do a final check to make sure your paper will be of interest to the editors. So first, take another look at the content to see if they're publishing similar types of articles in terms of topic, methodologies, article type, etc. And when you're checking out the editorial board, take the time to explore what type of research the editors are involved with. Is it similar or within the same area as yours? And also, when you're exploring the journal website, check to see if there are any calls for papers. There might be one that aligns with the type of work you do, and sometimes that's an easy way to get into the publishing game. But the best place to get a sense of whether your work would be of interest is the aims and scope statement on the journal website. So aims and scope statements are designed to give people a really good understanding of what the journal is about, what kind of content they publish, what kind of content they're interested in receiving. And I just wanted to show you a couple of examples here. And here's an example of an aims and scope statement from the journal Climate and Development. And this is actually a really long aims and scope statement. I wasn't able to capture everything, but I'll show you some of the main points here. First, it highlights the mission of the journal, and that is to make research and analysis accessible to diverse communities and to facilitate debate. And then they highlight the different themes that they're interested in publishing. And importantly, they stress that this is a qualitative social science journal and that quantitative work will likely not be accepted. So they're really, being very specific about the type of research they're interested in publishing. And then lastly, they list the topics that are of particular interest. And what I wasn't able to capture in my screenshot here is the types of articles that they accept. So they list the different types of articles and they list the peer review model that they use. So here's a very comprehensive description of a journal, which has a fairly broad scope within a slightly smaller area of environmental studies. So it's fairly specific here. And here's a journal with a much broader scope in environmental studies, sustainable development. And it's a multidisciplinary journal that publishes research across a broad scope of environmental sciences. And then here they list all of the areas that the journal covers, which again, I was unable to capture everything, but suffice it to say, if the article in question has anything to do with sustainability, they'll likely be interested in publishing it. So here is a very broad scope journal capturing both the qualitative and quantitative research. So someone working within this area would probably be able to find a home for their work there. Now, as I mentioned, along with the aims and scope statements, it's a good idea to look at what's been published in the journal in the last, say, 3 to 5 years and ask yourself, does my work fit in this journal? And the reason why I say 3 to 5 years is sometimes journals do change their scope over time. If you do find research that's similar to yours, you should consider referencing it. Remember, you're joining an ongoing conversation in your field and in that journal. So if they have published something that is really similar to your work, you know, it's not a bad idea just to reference it. Lastly, I would recommend reviewing the editorial board, as I mentioned already, because this really will give you a type of a sense of what type of research they're interested in publishing. Now, we would recommend that you choose a few journals that you feel would be a good fit for your work and create a list and rank them from your #1 choice onward. And when it's time to submit, start with your top choice. And if the journal is not interested in publishing your work, move on to your #2 choice, and so on and so forth until your article's accepted. It's all about having a clear strategy at the start of the process and acting on that strategy. All right, so next I just wanted to highlight the submission process. And before you submit your article, and I would argue before you even write your paper, it's important that you review the author guidelines for the journal. And every journal will have what we call instructions for authors. And these are the rule books for the journal. So under the instructions for authors, you'll find information about APCs and waivers for open access and any other fees that the journal might charge. For instance, some economics journals charge submission fees and that sort of thing. All that information should be clearly listed here. There will be information about the peer review process for that particular journal and information about the types of articles they accept and the word limits for the articles. There might be some reporting guidelines, especially for medical titles. And there will be information about how you should prepare your manuscript, so formatting, headings, reference style. They might even have a preference for a certain type of English. There will also be information about data sharing policies, and then any other relevant information, such as similarity checks conducted upon submission. So lots of information to find there. And here are just some things to keep in mind prior to submitting. First of all, in most cases, you'll be submitting to an online system, so make sure that you have all the files on hand that you need to submit. So figures, tables, and any other data files, which may make up your submission. And if you're using images or data that's not yours, make sure that you have obtained a permission. This is your responsibility. And you also want to make sure to include any necessary documentation, such as disclosure statements or competing interest statements if they're relevant to your project. And many journals and systems require ORCID IDs. And if you don't have one yet, I encourage you to get one. It takes only a couple minutes. And I'm finding more and more systems are asking for ORCID IDs as an identifier. And to avoid any problems or mistakes, make sure you have an agreed upon plan with your co-authors, if you have any co-authors, on who's responsible for what and which journal you're submitting to. Also, be certain that you have all the correct information of your co-authors, including their preferred spelling of their name and email address and affiliation. And lastly, I know this sounds silly, but make sure the version you submit is the final version and not an earlier draft. It happens every once in a while where somebody submits an article and then it's rejected and they look at the article and realize that they had submitted an earlier version of the paper. So it's worth taking the extra 5 to 10 minutes just to make sure all the files are the relevant files. And as I mentioned, when you submit your article to a journal, it's likely you will be doing so via an online submission system. And on this screen are two of the most common systems you're likely to come across: ScholarOne, Manuscripts, and Editorial Manager. It's a good idea to read all the guidelines for the system before you start. Both ScholarOne and Editorial Manager have instructional videos and information sheets that you can review before submitting. And I would also make sure, as I mentioned before, you have all your documents ready, including your abstract, before you start the process. And once you've submitted, you'll be able to monitor your paper's progress through the peer review process through the system so that it's always updated at what stage the paper's at. All right, so the next step to talk about is peer review. And I've been using this quote for many years. I might need to update my slides, but I really like this quote because as Andrew Preston highlights, peer review is not only about quality control, but it's about collaboration between researchers. And researchers agree that peer review is an essential part of the process. This is now a very dated peer review study, but it was a massive study conducted by Publons where you can see that the majority of researchers find peer review either important or extremely important. And peer review is where papers are assessed for all the different elements that we've discussed today. And peer review helps to improve the research and communication of the findings through recommendations. Peer review validates research. The editors and the peer reviewers, when accepting a paper, are giving it a stamp of approval, confirming that it is sound science. So it is an incredibly important part of the process. So let's take a quick look at what it looks like in practice. There are 3 different types of peer review that you're likely to come across during your career. And the first is called single anonymous. And this is when the peer reviewer knows the identity of the author, but the author does not know the identity of the peer reviewer. And this is the most common type of peer review within science, technology, and medical disciplines. The second type is double anonymous peer review. And this is where all the identities are hidden and tends to be the most common type of peer review within arts and humanities and social sciences. However, I always like to highlight it is fairly easy to discern the identity of an author if they have presented their work previously or if they are citing themselves extensively. So if you're about to submit to a journal that is practicing double anonymous peer review, you might want to take a few minutes to anonymize your paper. If you're citing yourself, replace your name with author, check your acknowledgement section to make sure that there's nothing there that would identify you. And then lastly, there is open peer review where all identities are known. And keep in mind, there are many varieties of open peer review, from the basic where everyone's identity is known to a completely open process where the public can see the submitted version of the article, all the peer reviewers and authors' comments, and the different versions of the paper. So make sure to review the instructions for authors before submitting your work to a journal, just to make sure that you know what type of peer review they practice so that you're not surprised by the process. Now, once you submit your paper to a journal, the editorial office will review your submission and decide whether they should send it out to the editor. If the submission has all of the required elements, they will send it to the editor, and the editor will then review the submission and decide whether to send it out to external peer reviewers. If they do send it out, they will choose 2 or more external experts to assess the paper and provide a report with a recommendation for a decision. The editor will then read through the reports and make a decision about the paper. Now, there are a few different decisions that can be made during this process, including rejection and acceptance. However, the most common decisions are desk rejection and revise and resubmit. So desk rejections occur before the paper is sent out to the external peer reviewers. And these decisions are usually made by the editor and in some cases by the editorial office, and are usually made within 1 to 2 weeks after the submission of the article. And the main reason for desk rejection tends to be because the article wasn't a good fit for the journal, or it might be because the article was too low quality for the journal or something like that. But the most common reason is because it's not a good fit for the journal. Now, revise and resubmit decisions are made after the paper has been peer reviewed. These decisions are based on the recommendations made by those peer reviewers, but it's always the editor's decision in the end. So this decision means that the peer reviewers and the editors are interested in your work, but they feel that there are areas that could be improved. Revise and resubmit with major revisions means that there is something in your paper that the editor and peer reviewers find promising. It could be the data you're working with, your case study, your arguments, your theoretical framework, any number of things. But you still likely will have quite a bit of work to do. It's not guaranteed that your article will be accepted. Now, revise and resubmit with minor revisions, sometimes called conditional acceptance, means that there are some small changes that need to be made, maybe additional citations, reformatting of a table, these types of things. Usually, if you address these changes, your paper will be accepted in the end. Now, once you finish your revisions, you will resubmit to the journal, and the editor will look at the new version and will possibly send it back out to the reviewers to see if they're happy with how you've addressed their concerns, especially if it's a revise and resubmit with major revisions. They may ask you to make additional changes if they feel that you did not address their original concerns sufficiently. And this can happen a couple of times with you making revisions and the reviewers asking you to try again. And the bad news is that this cycle can happen 2 to 3 times and your paper can be rejected in the end if the editor feels you were not able to address the peer reviewer's concerns sufficiently. But I'll tell you how to avoid that in just a moment. So responding to reviewer comments is a really important part of the publishing process, and I don't think it's talked about enough. At times when you receive a reviewer report, it can feel like a rejection, especially with revise and resubmit with major revisions. Try not to become upset, but if you are upset, close your computer, go into your kitchen, make yourself a lovely drink, and forget about it for a couple of days. And when you're ready to get back to work, carefully read that decision letter from the editor. It may include advice on how to respond to the reviewer comments, especially if they're suggesting kind of opposing things. And it will definitely include information about deadlines for returning your revisions. If you have co-authors, it's a good idea to set up a meeting early on to review all those reviewer comments. And whether you have co-authors or not, you want to carefully go through each of those reviewer reports and make a list with every single one of their suggestions for improvement. You may want to group the comments based on category, i.e. literature review, method section, whatever works for you. But the most important thing is you capture every one of their questions or suggestions for improvement. And then you can go through that list and decide which recommendations you'd like to adopt and make those changes. Now, here's the key to avoiding the fate of going through the revisions process a couple of times and still being rejected. When you send back your revisions, you must include a note to the editor clearly detailing how you've addressed the peer reviewer's concerns. So, where you've adopted the peer reviewer's recommendations, clearly detail what you've changed and where that change can be located in the paper. So you can, list the page and line number, you can highlight it. Some journals welcome the use of track changes to help editors and peer reviewers see what you've done as well. But you still need that cover letter explaining what you've done. Now, you will likely not agree with every single one of the peer reviewers' recommendations. In those cases, you need to clearly and respectfully explain why you chose not to amend your paper. And again, be very specific. So for instance, if the peer reviewer thought you should cite another paper, but you feel it's well out of scope of your project, explain why that is so that both the peer reviewer and editor understand your logic. Now, once you've detailed how you've addressed each of the peer reviewers' comments, review your response to the editor and make sure that you've included all the recommendations and the actions that you've taken and that you've done so in a clear manner and that the letter is professional and devoid of any frustration. One model is to kind of number your actions just so it's easy for the editor to see, okay, here's one recommendation, you've written out the recommendation and what the action was that you took. It's really about having a nice structure to that to make it easy to follow. And when you write your letter, you want to make sure that letter is devoid of any frustration. This can be a really challenging process, so it's absolutely understandable that you may become a bit frustrated. It's just important that that doesn't influence your communication with the editor. Most importantly, remember to be respectful and professional during the process. This is your community, your future network. You may end up submitting to the journal again. You may want to be a peer reviewer for the journal. You may want to become a board member one day, or you may have dreams of collaborating with the individuals who are currently reviewing your papers. So keep all of this in mind during the process, and remember that the editor and peer reviewers are just trying to help you publish the very best version of the work. So try not to take this process personally. It's not about you as a researcher. It's really about how you're communicating your research findings. So once your paper is accepted, which I'm sure it will be sent to the production department, and they will send it out for copy editing and typesetting. And once you receive the typeset proofs, you'll usually have about 2 to 3 days to review, answer any questions the copy editing team has, and make any changes. And you want to check your proofs against the original text for accuracy and check that all the figures, tables, etc. are correct. No major changes should be added at this point, just minor grammar and formatting and language changes. And once you've approved the proofs, the article will be published online on the publisher's website, registered with Crossref, indexed in the relevant databases such as PubMed, Web of Science, as well as in the preservation archives. Then it's up to the publisher and to you to make sure that people see and read your article. So most publishers will have guidance on how to share and promote your work on their author services website. And I encourage you to be really proactive and use social media and other methods to share your work as much as possible. So you'll find much more training and guidance on how to successfully navigate the publishing process on the Research4Life website. There's a link there. I'm sure there are plenty of links in the chat as well. And that is it for me. There's my contact information if you want to get in touch afterwards. But with that, I will stop sharing.
I have to unmute, and we'll definitely. There's so much information, and there were a couple comments in the chat noting that we will make sure everyone gets the presentation. Oh, put your contact information in the.
I'll put it in the chat right now.
Yes. It was just so very useful, and there's so many good bits of information.
It's probably too much information.
Yeah, but they'll have the PowerPoint and they'll have the video to listen to again, and you put your name in. We just appreciate your knowledge and energy and taking the time to present to this group. With that, I would like to turn it over to your colleague, Tina. I can't pronounce her last name. I have forgotten it.
It's Chisnell. Tina Chisnell.
Oh, there it is.
Hi, Tina.
Hi. I
Okay.
just need to share. Let me just try and share my screen.
Make sure you can share. And
Yeah,
this is a great segue to talk about ethics and publishing after the presentation. So we've had a day of practical, this is how you do things, and wonderful overviews. And we also had a presentation about librarians being facilitators. So this will be a good final session for today, following up on what Victoria did. So I turn it over to you, and everyone seems to be hanging in there quite.
Oh, okay. So can you just let me know that you can see my slides? So the welcome slide?
Slide is showing. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Okay. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for inviting me to speak today. My name is Tina Chisnell, and I'm a research integrity auditor working with Wiley. So before I start, I'll answer any questions at the end, and I'll do just what Victoria's done, and I'll leave my name and my email address so you can ask me any questions if I can't answer them here. So with that being said, I'll begin. So today I'm going to talk about ethical issues for research writing and publishing. So this is a topic that's crucial, but it's often overlooked or maybe not given the attention it deserves. So why is it important? Well, we live in a world where academic research and success is measured by how much we publish. So I'm sure you've all heard the phrase publish or perish. And there's lots of pressure on you to publish as much as you can and as often as you can. So it's really important to ask, are we doing it the right way? So let's start with the basic but really important question. So what do we mean by ethics? ethics are the moral principle that guides our behavior. If we could just mute ourselves so that I can carry on. That's okay. Okay, sorry. So it gives us a sense of what's right and wrong, and it helps us to decide how we should act even when no one is watching.
Samara! Samara!
Can everyone,
Hi, Samara!
can everyone mute?
Carry on.
Yeah, I was going to say that, but I was muted.
Okay, I'll carry on. So I think
we're
we know
now.
that ethics plays an important role in every profession, but it's particularly important in research. So the next question would be, why does it matter so much in research? So, did I get back? In today's digital age, anything can be published online. If it goes viral or if someone has a really large following, it can mean that it's difficult to know what's true and what's not true because it can just spread like wildfire. So this is where ethics in research comes into play. We have a duty to ensure that the scientific record is honest, robust, and reliable. And if we don't, the consequences can be really serious. Because as researchers, you're often building your work on previous studies. So you need to be able to trust that the work you're referencing is solid. And if it's not, you could be wasting your valuable resources, damage reputations, and ultimately the public will lose faith in scientific publications. So what happens if the public loses trust? Well, policymakers usually rely on peer-reviewed evidence to make decisions. So if they start to doubt this evidence, they might turn to less reliable sources, leading to poor decisions and potentially harmful outcomes. So to make sure we're behaving ethically and with integrity, we need to know what we should avoid. So what is scientific misconduct? So scientific misconduct is anything that compromises honesty in research. It can range from the obvious, so plagiarism, fabrication of results, to the not so obvious, like not disclosing funding sources or manipulating a peer review process. So I'm pretty confident that the majority of stakeholders involved in publishing have good intentions and they're not at all interested in deliberately publishing misleading research. So you're probably wondering whether misconduct really is a big issue at all. The simple answer is yes, unfortunately. So there's a systematic review published in PLOS ONE, which found that nearly 2% of scientists admitted to fabricating, falsifying, or modifying data at least once in their career. And even more striking, up to 33% admitted to other questionable practices. So this slide shows the volume and rate of retractions from the years 2014 to 2022. And you'll notice that there's a steady rise in retractions year upon year, and there's a sharper increase in more recent years. And it's not just the volume of retractions, the rate of retractions per paper has also increased. So in 2014, you can see that there were 3.5 retractions per 10,000 papers. But by 2022, that number had more than tripled to 11.2 per 10,000 papers. So it's worth pointing out that over time, journals and the research community have become more alert to misconduct, which would mean that we're better at spotting problems that might have gone unnoticed before. So this has probably played a role in the increase in retraction rates. At Wiley, we weren't immune to this. So we saw firsthand during a coordinated targeting of our special issues at Hindawi. And following an investigation, this led to a significant number of retractions. I should also say that not all retractions are going to be a result of research misconduct. Sometimes papers are just retracted because of genuine mistakes, not because anyone meant to mislead. But if those mistakes seriously affect the conclusions, or if there are so many errors that the editors can't trust the results anymore, then retracting the paper is still the right course of action. And we know that retractions can be really upsetting, especially when the errors weren't intentional. So our aim is to work with authors to keep the scientific record accurate and trustworthy. So retractions aren't about blame, and we understand that honest mistakes happen, and we're here to help authors through that process. So we've talked about the importance of trust in scientific publication. So to maintain this trust and maintain the integrity of the scientific record, the whole community needs to feel a joint responsibility. And without collaboration between all these stakeholders, we won't be effective. So I'm going to cover all these stakeholders, the authors, the readers, reviewers, and publishers. But since this session is for researchers, I'm going to focus mainly on the authors. But that said, I want to reiterate that it is all the stakeholders that have this responsibility. So let's look at authors to start with. What do authors need to do to make sure published content is ethical? As you'd probably expect, authors have important responsibilities since they're ultimately responsible for providing us with the content which will be shared with the public. So authors have a responsibility to gather and interpret data in an honest way, which would include getting ethical approval, using appropriate editing methods when preparing figures, including all relevant data, so not selectively including or excluding data to make it neatly support your hypothesis, to avoid dividing one meaningful complete paper into several different papers. So we call this salami slicing. So some researchers do this to increase their number of publications, which can help them to advance their careers. However, this is a problem because it dilutes the overall value and significance of research. And when a study is broken up in this way, each individual part will lose context and depth, and it can make it difficult for readers to really grasp the full picture and the implications of the research. Authors also have the responsibility to ensure that everyone who makes a significant intellectual contribution to a paper is given authorship status. So this is just making sure that everyone is getting their just rewards. In the same manner, authors should not include individuals who have not made a significant or intellectual contribution to the study. So for instance, a senior researcher or mentor shouldn't just be added because of their status. This is just as unacceptable as leaving an author out of an author list. Authors also have the responsibility to ensure that the content of and approve the content of the manuscript and the final version. So this is an important point, as we often come across cases in which an article has to be retracted due to problematic data, and an author will contact us to say that they didn't contribute to that problematic figure, and so they want their name removed from the retraction. So it's really important to understand that all authors are responsible for the content of the whole article, and they should approve the final version of the manuscript. Another point to mention is that we don't differentiate between the position of authors in an author list. So the order of the authors and the designation of first authorship doesn't hold any legal significance. All the authors will share equal responsibility and accountability for the entirety of the research. So if the article is retracted, we don't apportion blame to a single author, and all authors will be named in that citation. Authors also have a responsibility to place their results in the appropriate context of the field through discussion and referencing of published work. So it's important that authors connect their findings to existing research. This means that they should reference previous and reliable studies and show how their results either support or go against previous findings. Authors should also provide recommendations based on the results of their work. And finally, authors have a responsibility to inform the editor of related submissions by the same author. So this prevents duplicate publications so that the same content isn't published multiple times in multiple journals. Again, this could mislead readers into believing that an author has conducted more research than they actually have, and so it could elevate their status artificially. And it can also mislead the public into believing that there is more evidence to support a particular finding than there actually is. So what does make an author? There is no one-size-fits-all definition to authorship. So according to COPE, it can refer to the creator or originator of an idea, or the individual or individuals who develop and bring to fruition the product that disseminates intellectual or creative works. So the criteria for authorship can differ depending on the field that you're working in. So there are different criteria for a biomedical field versus a psychology field, for instance. And so authors should really check this for their own field of study. So in general, we say that the minimum requirement for someone to be included as an author is that they have made a substantial intellectual contribution to the research, and they must be accountable for the work undertaken. and they need to be deserving of the recognition for that work and be able to answer questions about the work. So any individual who doesn't meet that authorship criteria but has contributed in some capacity should be acknowledged with their approval. So this could include things like general mentoring, collecting data, providing materials or lab space, providing funding, providing language or language type support or polishing, supervising but not being directly involved. We understand that authorship can change during the publication process. So authors may be added or removed, and this is common during the revision stages. And while this is okay, it should be done with the individual's awareness and their approval, and it should also be explained to the editor. So editors and publishers tend to look more closely at changes to authorship which are being requested after a paper has been accepted, since this isn't something we expect at that stage. So the take-home message is that authorship equals responsibility for the contents of the manuscript. So all authors should be aware of their inclusion and also have the opportunity to approve the final version of the manuscript. So the contributor roles taxonomy, known as credit, is a way for authors and contributors to describe how they contributed to the research article. There are 14 roles included in this system. And while some of these roles might contribute to authorship, individually, they don't all automatically qualify someone as an author. So for instance, an individual who is responsible for funding acquisition wouldn't qualify to be listed as an author. This system is very useful as authors can clearly communicate their individual contributions and avoid misunderstandings about who was responsible for which part of the work. Credit is becoming more common across various publishers and journals, and depending on the journal, providing credit roles might be optional or it might be mandatory. At Wiley, we recommend authors include a contribution statement regardless of the requirements, just for the sake of transparency. And this is I've just included a slide just to show you what it looks like. So when you click on the author, you can see just how they contributed. So I've just got some top tips for authorship. Authors must have the permission and agreement of all collaborators named as authors or contributors. So just to be clear, even if someone is named in the acknowledgement, you still must have their permission. Ensure all authors agree with the order in which names should appear on the manuscript. Now, this is important because even though we as publishers don't differentiate between the position of an author who's listed, we do accept that other institutions or funders may differentiate between the order that authors are listed. So it's important that all authors agree on this. You should also include in your manuscript for yourself and for each of your co-authors, your email address, your affiliation, and your ORCID ID. And this would be very important if we need to contact you regarding a problem with your article so that we can resolve it without any kind of delay. Ensure a corresponding author is agreed upon. And my final point is that ghost, guest, or gift authorship is ethically unacceptable. So I'll just go through what that means. So ghost authorship is where someone who has contributed significantly to a research paper is deliberately not listed as an author in the published article. And that could be because the person is a junior researcher or perhaps to hide a potential conflict of interest. Guest authorship is where someone is included as an author on a publication without having made substantial contributions to the study. And this is normally done as the guest author is already established in the field and their name is used with or without their consent to elevate the paper's credibility or to improve its chances of publication. And then finally, gift authorship is where someone is included as an author, even though they don't fit the criteria for authorship. And normally it's in exchange for payment or favours. And authors can sometimes feel pressured to add a mentor or a supervisor as an author, which is unacceptable. So I want to focus now on inclusion of images in your research article. And the reason why I'm focusing on this quite heavily is because a lot of the integrity issues that I see stem from inappropriate image preparation practices. So let's look at ethical image preparation and what this involves. The overall message I'd like to give for image preparation is less is more. So you shouldn't enhance, move, delete, shift, or add to any specific part of an image. If you're altering the brightness or contrast, make sure you apply it evenly across the whole image. And any adjustment shouldn't hide or remove or distort any of the original elements of the image. Overdoing the editing, like highlighting one part of the image more than others, is inappropriate. Also, emphasizing experimental data relative to the control is also unacceptable. If you do happen to make non-linear adjustments or delete any part of an image, this should be mentioned clearly in the figure legend. Some researchers will merge images together to make a composite image, either from different gels or fields of exposure. And this is okay if there's a good reason for it. So we just say to make sure the different parts are clearly marked in the figure and explained in the legend, including reasons for merging the images together. Also keep all the original images used to make the composite in case it's required in the future. So on that note, there is always a chance that original unprocessed images will be requested if a concern is raised. So we ask that you keep your original data for as long as you can, and your replicates would be useful. So now we're just going to show you some examples of the types of inappropriate image editing we see quite regularly. So image A, you can see there's original Western blot. An original blot has, and they're separate blots which have been spliced together to give the impression of a single blot. And whereas splicing isn't forbidden, the splices here aren't indicated with lines, so it's misleading to the reader, who will assume that the samples were just run on the same gel. In image B, we can see that the authors have edited the original blot and they've oversaturated it to the point where there's no longer a clear distinction between the bands of interest. And then in image C, we can see that the authors have increased the contrast of the image, and in doing so, they've obscured 2 additional bands, which is very misleading. And then finally, in image D, you can see that the author has manipulated the blot to intensify some bands and reducing the intensity of others, and also removed some bands. And this is very misleading. Sometimes we see problems that are more of an obvious attempt to deceive or mislead the reader. And I've included some of these examples of some like image fabrication. So in image A, you can see that a portion of the spectrum has been manipulated so that there's no noise, and there are 2 portions of the spectrum that's identical, and we can clearly see that this is fabricated. And in image B, we can see that there's some histology slides, which shows an overlap between the 2 slides. This may have been accidental, and it could just be a case of figure mismanagement during preparation. And it would really depend on how many images were like this and duplicated within a paper, and whether a correct version is still available and would still align with the conclusions. We sometimes do see duplications within a histology slide at the corner, and in some cases this has occurred completely innocently, and it's not an attempt to mislead or deceive, and it's just a result of where the author has tried to duplicate a part of the slide so that they can label it A, B, C, or D. So we advise authors to take really good care when you're labeling your figures that you're not inadvertently introducing some duplications. So I have another example here, and I thought I'd invite you to see if you could spot any signs of image manipulation. So I'm just going to give you a couple of seconds. I don't think it should take too long. Okay, so you can see that there are duplications within and between these 2 figures, G and I. You can clearly see that the duplicated elements marked with the red oval frames. One additional note, authors often just think that, well, I'll just remove that problematic figure and then we can just solve the problem because the rest of the figures support the conclusions, and so this figure doesn't really matter. And unfortunately, that's not an option once it's published. So we also don't accept data from repeat experiments that have been conducted after an article has been published to replace a problematic figure. So this type of repeat experiment can't be used as a substitute for original raw data, as this would just imply that a research paper merely stated a claim and that was then later supported by compelling experimental evidence. So now I was going to dive into the content of your article, and a significant problem we see is plagiarism. So what is plagiarism? I've got a few definitions on my slides. So plagiarism is the act of presenting the words, ideas, or images of another as your own. So the result being that the author or creators are not given the credit they deserve. When we talk about plagiarism, most people just think it's copying and pasting text, but it's more than that. Plagiarism also means taking someone else's ideas, their arguments, or even their unique way of structuring information and presenting it as their own. Even if you change the words, if the original concept came from someone else, you need to give that person credit. It's about respecting intellectual ownership, not just avoiding copied sentences. We also need to think about self-plagiarism, and I've provided the definition on this slide, so the presentation of your own previously published work as original. So this is quite an important point, and some authors do forget, or they don't understand, that self-plagiarism is also prohibited. And the reason why this is forbidden is because it can make readers believe that claims are more valid or reproducible, and it can mislead readers into believing that there are more papers published on a particular topic than there actually are. So self-plagiarism can include duplicate, or sometimes called redundant publication. According to COPE, this is defined as repeated publication of data or ideas, often with at least one common author. Duplicate submission, which is the submission of the same work to more than one journal at the same time. Or text recycling, when sections of the same text appear unattributed in more than one of the author's own publication. So how do we detect plagiarism? So at Wiley, we use a software called Authenticate, which is a web-based plagiarism detection service. And this compares manuscripts across a huge database of published content. The report's split into two columns, as you can see here, the manuscript text on the left and the matching sources on the right. And we can see how much of the manuscript matches individual sources. We would be concerned if there's a high overall percentage similarity or a high percentage similarity to just one individual source. So I was going to show you some examples of what we see. The report will pick up any similarity. Some of it we can just ignore. So for instance, in this example here, the report has picked up like strings of words like to, the, and diffusion length and minority carriers, and they're all apparently similar to source 52. You can see it's just picking up a few strings of words, which is not concerning, and it's inevitable in writing, so we can just ignore these. Then we have an example on the left here where the report is picking up longer phrases, which could be considered more concerning. However, we're still mindful that in this case, the words are within the figure legend, which often overlaps with other literature because there's just a limited number of ways of describing a particular diagram or data set. And there are also commonly accepted terminology used in particular disciplines, which can't be avoided. So again, with the example on the left, we wouldn't be concerned. With the example on the right, again, I'm just illustrating the same point. Although it looks bad, we're still mindful that this is the materials and methods section. And it's really difficult to describe a method in a totally original way. And why would you if it's an accepted method in your field of study? In this example, I would be more concerned. So you can see there's a large section which has been copied from one source. With an article like this, I would scrutinise it more carefully to see if there are more instances with this kind of extent of overlap. And if there is, I wouldn't accept this article. If it's only this instance, I would probably ask the author to rewrite or remove this passage or include a reference to the original source. And then my final example is unacceptable. You can see that there are lots of large passages which have been just lifted from various sources. This is considered plagiarism and we wouldn't accept this article. So now we know what constitutes plagiarism. How can you make sure that you avoid it unintentionally so that you don't fall into this trap? Our advice is that you should have a broad knowledge of your topic. So read lots of different sources and avoid relying on a single or few sources. Make sure the ideas are your own. And if you are using someone else's ideas or words, make sure you reference them. So just to reiterate, not all overlaps are considered problematic, and some similarities are expected and acceptable. So you can reuse parts of your own thesis, like the abstract, tables, or figures, as long as you acknowledge and cite them properly. If you want to reuse another person's work, you need to get their permission and the publisher's permission, because that may also be needed as well. So that will depend on their policy and their copyright license. And again, you'll need to acknowledge and cite their work. And lastly, translations are acceptable as long as you've got permission and you acknowledge and cite the original source. So I was going to move on to generative AI. I'm not going to talk too much about this, but in a nutshell, generative AI is technology that learns from pre-existing data and then creates new content. And I should emphasize that when I say new, I'm saying this with some caution, because it's quite questionable whether something can really be new if it's been trained on pre-existing data. So generative AI can be a really useful tool for research publishing, but it can also cause issues if it's not used properly. The biggest problems are spreading misinformation, using outdated information, and falling into plagiarism. So at Wiley, we don't forbid authors from using generative AI, but we do have some advice on how to use it properly. First off, review the terms and conditions and make sure AI doesn't claim ownership of your content or put any limits on how you can use it. Next, human oversight is key. It's great to use AI to help with your writing, but it shouldn't replace your own work. You're still fully responsible for everything in your article. And when it comes to disclosure, keep track of how you've used AI technology. Note down why you used it, whether it influenced any key arguments or conclusions, and how you checked the AI generated content for accuracy. And this should all be disclosed to the publisher, usually in the acknowledgement section. For rights and protection, make sure that AI technology and its provider don't get rights over your content, like using it to train their AI. Carefully check the terms and conditions for clauses about ownership. And finally, responsible and ethical use is crucial. Respect data protection laws, so don't use AI to copy someone else's unique style or voice, and always fact check AI generated content for accuracy and neutrality. Be aware that AI can sometimes produce very biased views, so take steps to avoid spreading stereotypes or misinformation. And also, if you're working with sensitive or unpublished content, use tools with strong privacy controls to keep everything confidential. A couple of extra points worth mentioning is that tools that improve spelling, grammar, and general editing aren't included in this. And so remember, AI can't fulfill the role or be listed as an author of an article. So I think you can see that there are some positives and negatives to using AI. The positives are that it can help to overcome writer's block, and it can help to summarize work, and it can also be very useful to research a topic. But the negatives are that it can misinterpret facts and introduce bias and compromise privacy. So once you've written your article, it's time to choose your journal and where you want to publish it. And it's really important that you think carefully about this decision after all the hard work you put into your research. So I think Victoria's actually covered quite a lot of this in her presentation that I was just watching. So I'm going to whiz through this a little bit because I think you've heard this already. But there are a few questions that you should consider. So just make sure that the journal is right for your research. So even if it's not the top ranked in your field, just make sure it is appropriate for your research. Check whether your funder has specific requirements for where you publish. Does the journal have a good impact factor or a good subject rating? Is it globally accessible, and does it have a good reputation? So the last thing you want to do after you've worked really hard on your research is to tarnish your study and your own reputation by publishing your valuable work in a predatory journal. So again, I think Victoria has actually covered this. So I've mentioned predatory journals. So a predatory journal takes advantage of the open access model and the pressure on researchers to publish by charging fees without providing the service that you'd expect them to from like a legitimate journal. So they often engage in shady practices that's all about making money. They don't care about integrity, and they can really harm the scientific record by publishing low quality or even fake research. So just to have a closer look at how they do this, they usually exploit the open access model, and they use, instead of using the fees that they're collecting, the article processing charge that they charge, instead of using that for appropriate peer review, they just pocket the money without providing any expected services. They'll make false claims like lying about peer review, lying about having editorial boards, their high impact factors and indexing status, just to make themselves look more credible. They can tend to use quite aggressive solicitation. They aggressively chase after submissions from authors sending excessive and unsolicited emails, and they promise really quick publication and high visibility. However, just remember that not all invitations from journals to submit are going to be bad, so some judgment from the authors are required. They would normally have very low or no publication standards, so they accept articles with little to no scrutiny, regardless of the quality or the relevance. So if you ever receive an invitation which invites you to submit to a journal and they promise 100% guarantee of acceptance and publications, it's very likely that the invitation is from a predatory journal. So it's very important that you are aware of these practices to protect your own work and your reputation. So what's at stake? I think there's a lot at stake. There's financial implications, potentials for reputational damage to you and your institution, and ultimately a waste of your time and your valuable resources. And Victoria went through the think, check, submit, so I'm going to skip through that because I think we've done that. So I've got some authorship resources here to help you. I'm going to leave these slides with you. So these are just some links that will help give you some guidelines on authorship. And then next, I was going to move on to reviewers. So what are reviewers' responsibilities? So as researchers, you may also be invited by editors to review an article. And it goes without saying that a reviewer should only accept an invitation to review an article if they're confident that they have the relevant expertise. So reviewers have responsibilities to keep the manuscript and the peer review process confidential. The contents and the ideas from the articles shouldn't be shared or used in the reviewer's own work. Reviewers also have a responsibility to avoid delays. So it should take between 2 to 3 weeks to return a review report. And if you can't do this in that timeline, then the reviewer should let the editor know who invited them so they can find an alternative reviewer and invite them instead. Reviewers have a responsibility to support their comments with reasoning or evidence. So the reviewer will have been invited to work on a paper because they're an expert. It's important that they leave their own opinions and beliefs at the door and judge the papers impartially and on the basis of its scientific merit, even if it doesn't align with their own opinions or studies. Reviewers have a responsibility to alert the editor to any potential ethical issues. So this could include the spotting of references that don't exist or off topic, and all the other things that we've talked about previously, like image manipulation or fabrication of results. Also, if the reviewer sees that they have a potential conflict of interest, they should not review the article. Reviewers have a responsibility to keep their comments professional and fair and avoid personal criticism. So we do understand that reviewers can be passionate when they see submitted articles which they feel don't meet their own standards and high standards. So it can be difficult for them to control these feelings, but they must remember to be professional and provide reasons for their recommendations and constructive criticism to help the authors to make improvements if necessary. They should be mindful that their comments should be appropriate and not use words or phrases that could offend the authors. Even if the article is complete nonsense, they don't have to say it is. They should find a more measured and appropriate way of communicating this. We're very, very grateful for our reviewers. They're incredibly important. They ask questions and often question the answers to ensure the research is rigorous and robust. So before agreeing to review a paper, it's really important to think about whether you might have any conflict of interest yourself. So this could include personal relationships with any of the authors, for instance, if they're a friend or family. professional relationships such as current or recent co-authorship, shared grants, or institutional ties. For instance, if they're your PhD supervisor, or if you were a consultant for their study, you shouldn't be reviewing their article. Financial interests that could be affected by the publication of the work. For instance, if it could boost the value of a product or a patent you're connected to. Competitive interests, such as working on a similar project or being in direct competition with the authors for a research grant. Or strong academic or ideological positions that could bias the review. In any of these cases, you should decline the invitation to review the article. So I've already covered some guidance on generative AI use for authors, and reviewers should also be mindful about how they're using this tool. So it's okay for reviewers to use AI to translate or clarify the points made in a review, but it's not acceptable to upload a manuscript into a large language model. Manuscripts shared for reviews are confidential, so putting them into an AI tool breaches that confidentiality. And the editor would have chosen the reviewer based on their expertise, so the views must be the reviewer's own, and the reviewer is wholly responsible for the review submitted on an article. Publishers. So publishers also have responsibilities, and it's very much aligned with the responsibilities of the reviewers. So the responsibilities of the publisher are to base decisions only on the scientific aspects of the work. So an editor may feel the need to rescind a reviewer's report, for instance. They may think it's not detailed or thorough enough, or they may feel that it's not based on the scientific content of the article. In these cases, the editor should not use that report as a basis for their decision. An editor has a responsibility to ensure that submitted manuscripts are handled confidentially and not use work reported in unpublished articles for their own research. So this is the same as we discussed for the reviewers. They should ensure that they are efficient and fair and timely with their review process. So this may require the editor to uninvite tardy reviewers so they can avoid delays. And they should declare any conflicts of interest that they may have. And this can be difficult, and we understand that, particularly in some niche subject areas where many researchers have worked together in some context or another. So in general, we advise that editors should recuse themselves if they've recent or ongoing relationships with the authors that could compromise their impartiality. Editors should also not use reviews that an author has opposed. So sometimes we ask them to either recommend reviewers and reviewers that they do not want to review their articles. So editors shouldn't use reviewers that are solely recommended by the author, and there should be at least one reviewer who is not a recommended reviewer to make sure that the review process is not compromised. Editors should also be mindful of the number of citations a reviewer is requesting the authors to include. So this could be their own articles or articles from another author group. And this is known as citation cartels, which are defined as groups of authors that cite each other disproportionately more than they do other groups of authors that work on the same subject. In these cases, the editor or publisher should contact the reviewer and ask them to remove these excessive citations from their report. And likewise, the editor shouldn't insist on the author referencing their own work. And then finally is readers. Readers have responsibilities just like any other stakeholder. So they should evaluate published research critically and look very closely at the content to make sure the methods and findings are solid and trustworthy. They should report any concerns of misconduct like plagiarism, fake data, or conflicts of interest, and let the journal editors know about their concerns so that they can be further investigated. So some readers will often use forums like PubPeer to share concerns with the scientific community. We always encourage readers to contact editors directly about a concern as opposed to publishing on PubPeer, as concerns brought directly to an editor or the research integrity team are more likely to be addressed promptly and effectively. readers should respect the intellectual property of the researchers and give credit where it's due. So they can do this by making sure they cite and acknowledge the original sources of information in their own work. And finally, they should promote transparency by pushing for openness in the publication process and encourage authors and publishers to share all important and relevant details and anything that can be seen as conflicts of interest. So lastly, I was going to go into how publishers handle ethical cases. So this is where my team IACR comes in. So IACR stands for Integrity Assurance and Case Resolution. So we would normally hear about a concern from a whistleblower or a complainant, or sometimes pub peer comments, or sometimes it'll be authors themselves that come to us, and editors if the article hasn't been published yet. So our first step would be to check the validity of the concerns. So do the concerns raise concrete and detailed claims? If not, we ask for more details. Often the author will say that the complainant has a grudge against them. And the motivation of the complainant isn't our concern. If the concern has a scientific basis, it should be investigated regardless. We would then contact the author to request an explanation and supporting data if appropriate. And we'd investigate according to COPE flowcharts, if applicable. So we evaluate the author's response to the concern in collaboration with our editors or subject matter experts, and we find out whether the explanation is sufficient and whether the results and conclusions still stand. We ensure that we are always following COPE guidelines throughout the whole process. So potential outcomes of an investigation could be no action at all if we feel that, however, the author has responded is satisfactory. It could be an institutional investigation if we can't resolve the matter internally. It could be a correction or a retraction or an expression of concern. So we use expressions of concern if there are legitimate concerns, but we don't believe that it affects the conclusions, but we'd still like to make the readers aware so that they can proceed with caution. And that's what we do. And I'll end it there.
Hi, Lena, are you able to unmute now?
I have got some more time if anyone would like to ask any questions, and if I can't answer them, I can always get back to you. But
so, if Lenny, can you unmute now, or do you want me to close? Okay.
oh, the microphone's
all right. So maybe let me check. Thank you so much, Tina, for that session, and thank you to Victoria for taking us through the ethics and taking us through the previous session with Victoria, looking at how we navigate the publishing process. I know we're a bit over time, and we've got a couple of questions for you, Tina, in the chat. Maybe I'll just pick one that you could maybe quickly answer, and then the others we could then share in the chat. You could answer them. So I think the question was, and I'm sure if you addressed it fully, maybe you did already, what about AI detection? What are the publisher perspectives? How much % do you accept? Yeah, that one.
Okay, so with AI, I mean, it's still very new. So it's more about, we don't mind people using AI. It's just, it's more about disclosure. So if you are using AI, you should, in your methods section, say where you used it, or in your acknowledgements where you used it. And so it shouldn't be that AI is the author, if you see what I mean. So for language type stuff, that's absolutely fine. We're not really concerned because you can't really, we don't prove that AI, we haven't got the software to say, okay, this is completely generated by AI. We rely upon authors to disclose where they've used it. And then we can check whether, because AI will hallucinate things and will sometimes write absolute nonsense. So we will check, like fact checking, to make sure that it's all appropriately, that it's appropriate content and it's not just hallucinated, made up stuff by AI. So in terms of percentages, we don't really have like a percentage that we accept. We wouldn't expect it to have been used, say, in image generation for like a Western blot, for instance, or histology slides. But in use of to help with language in, say, the introduction, that doesn't really, that's fine, as long as the input that you've put in is yours and not somebody else's. But yeah, it is an ongoing, it's something that we are continually dealing with, and it is quite a big topic at the moment at Wiley because it's still quite new.
Yeah, I think it's the same from other publishers that I've also interacted with. So thank you so much, Tina, for that comprehensive answer. I do want us to close because I know that for our colleagues who are in West Africa, it's just before 6 p.m. for them. So it's quite late, and especially if they're still hanging around at the office. But I see two hands. Mahmoud and Daniel, please make your questions very quick and very short. We'll start with Daniel and then Mahmoud.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Please, when the presenter was talking about the plagiarism and talking about citing your source, there was a point where you don't have to rewriting it and all that was the issue. So I was thinking, because there's been this school of thought where if I see even the source I'm citing, do I copy everything there right from the original work and paste it in my work? Or do I need to rewrite it, add something to it, but still cite it? Which one is the preferred one? Thank you.
And if I can also then take maybe Mahmoud's question, then you can have both. And yes, I apologize, it's the colleagues in East Africa and the colleagues in Bhutan, it's even before 9 p.m. for them. So let's make it quick. All right, over to you, Mahmoud, then to Tina.
Yes, thank you for giving me a chance. And I must thank you, Tina, for her absolutely excellent presentation, a prepared presentation in the meantime. My question is that in the beginning, she mentioned us the retraction rate is ultimately rising. I am from Bangladesh. In our Bangladesh, it's also rising. And the one component is that sometimes the scientific article, they have the option. Authors have the option to choose the reviewer. And when an authors choose the reviewer in this own, then some manipulation, data manipulation, and some manipulation is coming here. And what is the question about it that? And you know, in Authenticate, Tina also mentioned the Authenticate software references. So my question is that Authenticate's already excused 20% of AI users. But what the perspectives from the Wiley publishers? This is my question. And thank you again for Tina for her excellent presentation. Thank you.
Okay, shall I? So the first question, so I'll just go with this question first. So the retraction rate, so we asked about the retraction rate, we do see it rising, and the reviewers, where the authors have chosen reviewer, some journals won't allow it at all, and some journals will allow them to recommend reviewers. That doesn't mean that we have to choose them. And we always say that there should be at least one reviewer that's not been chosen by or recommended by the authors themselves. That will make sure that it's impartial. So then if the reviewer that was recommended, because just because the author has recommended a reviewer doesn't mean they know them. It could be that they just know that they're very prominent in the field, they've written lots of papers on this subject. So we do allow for that, but we would expect the editor to check the background of that recommended reviewer to make sure they were appropriate. But then we would expect them also to have another reviewer that was completely nothing to do with the author, hasn't been recommended. So you can kind of see if they've got very, very, very different reports, you can see something's wrong here. And then you might want to disregard. Just because you've used that reviewer, the recommended reviewer, doesn't mean you have to say that I'm going to think about everything that they've written. You can disregard what they've said and maybe choose a third reviewer if you're suspicious of it. So I think we've got some things to mitigate that. So we make sure that we're not solely relying upon recommended reviewers. I didn't quite understand the authenticate one, so I think if you could just write that one down in the chat and I can try and, or I'll leave my email address and you can send me an email about that one. I didn't quite understand that question. And then the first one, sorry, Blessing, can you just tell me what the first question was again? About
I think you addressed it as well. So the
Daniel's?
second question from Mahmoud is the one that Mahmoud can send to you via email.
Yeah. What about Daniel's one, the Daniel's question?
Daniel, were you fully covered by the response?
No, so mine was about, mine was on the plagiarism, and we're talking about how to cite properly.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
yes.
I remember. So if it's just like a short quote, then we'd expect you to write down what the original words, and then you could actually then cite the sort of reference. But if it's like someone's idea, you can say that in your own words, but we'd still expect you to say that you have got that, where you got that from. So you'd still have to reference the person. So I think that's where you're asking whether you have to use their actual words or not. Sometimes people just, in their introduction, for instance, they start talking about an idea and then they'll say, as I've found in, and they reference the article, but they're not using their actual words. I think that's what you're getting at. So you don't have to actually use, depending on, if you're describing like something they found in their conclusions or something, you could just state what they found in your own words, but then reference the citation. But I will leave my email address and then you can, any other questions, you're free to ask me and I'll do my best to answer.
Thank you, Tina. Thank you so much, Tina. And before we go, in just a minute, I just want to thank all the facilitators for today. We covered many pertinent issues, and tomorrow is another exciting day. We will start at the same time, 1300 hours CAT. We are going to look at the Dimensions database, which is really good. We're going to talk about open access and interdisciplinary resources. We're going to have a focused session where we're looking at the different specified subject databases across the Research4Life content or programs. And we're also then going to look at citation management. And we're going to have a facilitator we're collaborating with from 21 Skills, looking at AI resources, which is also quite interesting. And then we'll end the day with a panel discussion looking at different components of what we discussed today, where we have 4 panelists in that panel as well. So really looking forward to more engagement tomorrow, same time, same place. Please make sure you join us by 10 minutes before or 5 minutes before, so that we can start right on time. But really want to thank the colleagues, especially those who stayed late or woke up very early. And I hope tomorrow Lenny's microphone will be working so that you can kick off on time. But thank you to everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy the rest of your evening. We will see you tomorrow, same time. Thank you, everyone. Take care.